Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Bianca, and I have been watching the Alex Murdaugh trial. And after observing some of the body language and mannerisms, I started to question myself. Would it be possible that he actually committed these crimes? And also, would it be possible that he's a psychopath? Because for me, or I believe for most normal people, it's really hard to imagine that someone would have or like the reason or how someone would be able to go through with a crime like this, especially with a family member. But honestly, I have a hard time imagining anyone committing um, a murder because it's just, it's the disregard for the human life, um, which the law describes one of the characteristics that people may be charged with, the disregard, because that is the only explanation, right? It's not caring for that human being. So I have been watching Alex's cross examination, and this is part 3. So I did watch with Jim the direct examination. I watched the cross examination. We had a video yesterday, and this is the continuation. Hopefully, we can get through everything. I will speed up the video to like 1.7, maybe 2 times the speed. And when something, you know, either emotional or some interesting response comes up, we slow down the video so we can observe Alex's body language better. So here we're going to start with what happened yesterday. We stopped the video right before the break, and it was just interesting to watch Alex as soon as because right now Alex has the expression of kind of like poor me, and I'm watching because Creighton is questioning him. So he's just like looking at Creighton and kind of like, are you believing me that, that request for approval, poor me kind of body language. And as soon as there's a break, he kind of like sighs out, he's like, he gives like a sigh of relief and just sits back in the chair, and it just changes very quickly. So I'm going to press play so we can all see this.
Maybe the most important fact of all, that you were at the murder scene with the victims just minutes before they died. Right?
I did not tell them that I went to the kennel.
We'll take a break at this time for about 15 minutes, talking to the jury. Please go to the jury room. Please not discuss the case.
Let's speed it up then.
When you picked up that chicken, was there any blood on it?
I don't believe so.
Did you wash your hands or all?
At that point in time, I don't believe that I did.
When you say you were there, you said Maggie was nearby you. Is that correct?
Right by me.
Was she messing with the hose at all?
At that time, no, she was not.
Did she mess with it the entire time that you were there, according to your new facts today?
While I was there, she did not
Your new fact.
touch. She was not fooling with a hose at all.
I'm gonna move this thing along. I'm gonna put up on the screen 6519, which is the condensed timeline. If I can have computer input, please.
I'm going to put it normal speed because the timeline, especially during the murders, the time of the murders is very crucial
It's the
in
condensed
his
timeline,
cross.
Mr. Griffin. All right. You see that up there, Mr. Murdaugh?
Yes.
All right, I'm on page 5. You see that cell tower map there?
That's up on my screen.
Yeah.
I do see that.
Would you agree with me that it reflects no cell tower activity on your phone from 6:52 to 9:04?
I do agree with that.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Murdaugh. Did you take your phone with you down to the kennels according to the new facts that you testified to yesterday and today?
I must not have.
You must not have.
If this is accurate, no, sir.
Is that typical for you?
Sure it is.
It's
Absolutely.
Okay. Tell me why that's typical.
If and when I'm going, now, it would be unusual if I was going out for any extended period of time, or if I was going, even on the property, if I was going somewhere for an extended period of time, I would usually have my phone. But for me to go knowing that I'm going to the kennel and coming right back, that's not unusual at all. I mean, you've heard the testimony about the service out there. The service is terrible. You have to be in a particular spot.
All right.
And you have to find a spot.
So the answer is you don't know whether or not you took it down there
And I believe that I probably didn't based on this data.
based on this. But unlike the photographic memory about other things, you don't remember whether or not you had your phone on you.
Mr. Waters, I've never,
Jim is already like shaking his head. I think that, as we approach the time of the murder, and Alex's response, they're so vague and still argumentative. I feel like Jim is realizing, inside of himself that maybe his friend might have done this, or he knows who did it, or he knows more than he's saying. And as far as the timeline goes, I just want to do a reminder real quick. We have a video. I have another video where I watched the whole timeline, and we paused at different times just so that we could understand the timeline, because the testimony was fairly quick. But in case anybody has questions or would like to watch that video, it's available.
claim to have a photographic memory, but I do not specifically remember if I had my phone that night. I do not dispute it based on this data, and that's not unusual for me.
Just like you don't remember, according to your new story, the last conversation you had with Maggie.
No, I remember having my last conversation with Maggie.
What was it? What were the last
Looking
words?
at this screen, you have the map up there. We're on page 6, and it shows you arriving back at Moselle at 6:42. You don't dispute that now, is that correct?
No, that's what this data
6:42
appears to
is
show.
so early, though.
And looking at the data, moving on to page 7, you have
Okay,
Paul
yeah.
arriving
Move on.
about 7:04. Is that correct? You don't have any reason to dispute that?
Well, that's what it says. He arrives at 4147 Moselle Road, which is the address of the shop. The house is 4157. I believe that Paul actually got there a little bit before that, but I
Okay.
think that's approximately accurate. I
Okay.
think Paul got there a little bit closer to 7 o'clock.
You would agree that that's the earliest data point that reflects his presence in Moselle?
If that's what the records show.
You don't dispute that?
I don't dispute that if that's the earliest data point. But again, I believe he got there a little bit earlier. And I try to look at these records to see if I could if that could
Why are
be
you getting
refuted.
loud?
And
Whoa.
I believe he got there a little closer to 7 or a little bit before 7.
Yeah, that's a good point. You looked at these records a lot before you had your testimony yesterday and today, didn't you, Mr. Murdaugh?
I've looked at these records other than the OnStar
Yeah, like my
records that
life
just
depends
came,
on it. I looked at the
when they
records.
were provided to me.
Wouldn't you?
Sure, I've looked at them.
Of course.
Right here, we have some steps on your phone, 29 steps. And then down at the bottom, we have 89 steps. Is that consistent when you and Paul were together on the property?
I mean, sure, we would go to different locations on the property. Sometimes we would get out, sometimes we wouldn't. We'd get out and walk around. We'd look at stuff. We'd do things. For example, you saw me messing with the tree. There'd be other ones. We may get out and look at a feeder. Maybe other ones we get out and look at hog signs where hogs are rooting. So it would be perfectly consistent with what Papa and I were doing that day.
Lots of movements in his face. The
And
nose, the
805
mouth.
to
Just
809.
lots of adapters here.
Would you agree that that's the last steps
after he
recorded on your
finishes
phone
the sentence,
before
which
902? when you
could
become a
be
very
a
busy bee?
sign of deception.
If that's what these records show. I see I took steps, his records show I took steps between 805 and 809.
So would you concede then that you're at the house around 809?
I would have thought so, yes.
Okay. And you said Paul was already back at that point?
No, I said just the opposite.
When did he get there?
All right. You talking about when I left the shop and went to the house when Maggie was there?
Yes, before you ate dinner.
No, as I said earlier, Paul and I were at the shop.
Per my last
Maggie
email.
got home. I left Paul at the shop and I went to the house. I think you were saying that I said I met Paul at the house, and that's incorrect.
Paul was still down at the shop when you were at the house, correct?
When I first went to the house, Paul was still at the shop, I believe.
All right. And was Maggie there when you arrived at the house?
This guy
Yes, I
seems
believe
very
she was.
stoic,
And
but
809
this
is the
guy
last steps
has
that you have on
great
this phone
faces
before
sometimes,
902,
like
correct?
BS.
That's what the data shows.
That's what I read from him. And Jim is just defeated. Jim is just like so disappointed. If I feel
Looking
bad.
now at page 15. I'm sorry, page 14.
Get it right,
Your
Creighton.
That you say when you got to the house is 809 and Paul was still down at the shop. But don't these records reflect that Paul is pinging with GPS data at the house at 808?
This record appears to show Paul at the house at 8:08.
All right.
Okay.
So those records don't fit with your new story that you testified yesterday and today. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe even right now, Mr. Waters, that that's right. I'm not saying what you're doing is you're taking 809 and saying that I'm at the house. And I mean, that may or may not be right. But what I'm saying is that when Maggie came
Creighton.
through, I left, and I believe that Paul stayed
Paul.
at the shop. Now, did Paul come right behind me? I'm not sure. But when I left him, I believe that when I left to go to the house, I believe that Paul stayed at the shop for a minute.
When you got to the house, did you put your phone down?
I'm sure I did.
Did you put it in the car, in the Suburban?
Did I put it in the Suburban?
When you got back to the house, did you put it in the Suburban? Was the Suburban parked out front?
The Suburban would have been parked wherever I parked it.
And she's great
Which is
too.
where?
Her
I
faces
believe on
are
the side.
Okay. And did you put your phone in Suburban?
At that time? No, I did
No,
not.
later.
Where'd you put it?
I'm not sure where I put it.
You're not sure about that either. Huh?
No, I'm not sure. When I went in the house, I'm not sure where I put my phone. I would think that I put it down somewhere, probably by the
Creighton
couch.
just walks
Didn't you
away,
testify
so
yesterday
not
when you were
interested
being
in
asked
whatever
by
he's
your
gonna
lawyer
say.
about that pause in Alameda when you were living?
Look at
leaving, and you had a
Alex's
very
facial
specific
movement.
recollection of your phone had fallen down in the crevice, and you had to pick it up and get it out. Remember testifying to that?
I do.
But you don't remember what you did with your phone when you got back at this point, huh?
I mean, Mr. Ward, those are two distinct, different things. I'm coming in the house and I put my phone down. I don't have a routine spot that I put it in right on this corner or
Okay,
right there.
sure.
You know,
Me neither.
I would assume that when I went in the house, I put it somewhere either on the table. You go by, go into the couch. I may have taken it to the bathroom. When I took a shower, it may have taken me a few minutes to go to the shower.
Smiling.
So I can't tell you exactly where I put it.
Like the stare, that predator stare on Alex's face, just follows him around like he wants to eat him and kill him and do something. It's like that constant following Creighton with the eyes, kind of like Creighton is challenging him and he is questioning him, and Creighton doesn't show any interest in his responses, because as soon as Alex starts talking, like that saying, if your lips are moving, you're lying. As soon as Alex starts talking, Creighton walks away. So when Creighton walks away, Alex wants to win that argument, so he keeps talking, which is another possible sign of deception. When it's an adapter, even after you made your point, and you just keep adding, and then, and it's like Creighton is not giving you the attention. So I guess when Creighton's not giving him the attention, he might be trying to keep talking to convince the jury or the people that are watching him. But even his face is like so angry at the end.
Is an awful specific recollection when you need it to try to make the new story that this jury's hearing and everyone's hearing yesterday and today with the data, correct?
Data.
But you're awful fuzzy on far more important things, aren't you, Mr. Murdaugh?
Which question? Here, I'll answer the first one first. No, I don't believe that's convenient, and I disagree with your categorization of the description.
All right, but you remember the console story, but you don't remember where you put your phone, whether or not you took it down to the kennels, whether it was in, you put it in the Suburban. Don't remember any of that, but Dad, you remember that console story, correct?
Well, I don't remember the console story, but you know, in that Suburban, and it's not the first time that it happened, but when that phone got down there, you had to go to great efforts to get it out, and you couldn't just reach over there and get it out.
All right, you say when you got to the house that Maggie was already there?
Yes.
When you saw your last steps were at 8:09?
Well, that's what you saw when this data recorded my last steps. But as you heard this testimony too, Mr. Waters, you know, that's not a precise, that's not a precise, you heard the testimony, you know what it is.
Well, how did you get back to the house? Remind us.
From the shop?
Yeah.
I went in a white pickup truck.
Went in the white pickup truck? Okay. And when you got into the house, where did you go?
We've already discussed this. I took a shower. Whether I did things for a moment before I went to the shower, I'm sure I talked to Maggie because she'd been gone. And if she came through the kennel, which I believe she did, we only talked briefly. So I would have talked to her, but I would have quickly gone to take a shower.
Okay. Going over to page 16, you would agree with me that the data reflects Maggie start logging steps and her phone disconnecting from the Mercedes around 8:17, correct?
I agree. At 8:17, her phone ends connection to her Mercedes.
And starts logging steps.
I don't see that, but I don't dispute it.
Well, you see the purple line talking about it disconnecting from the Mercedes.
I do see. I see where you're talking about. So yeah, I see it. 8:17, her phone starts logging steps. I agree with that.
Okay. So what you can see that appears to be when she arrived.
No, I don't believe that's when she arrived. I believe that, I mean, it was very normal for Maggie when she's driving to jump out of the car, run inside, go to the bathroom, do things, and either send me or Paul or go back or Buster or go back to her car herself and unplug her phone. So, I mean, I agree that's when her phone's unplugged, but I believe that Maggie got to the house a little bit before that. That's the whole reason why Paul and I went to the house.
The phone was in the car?
But you're saying Paul arrived after Maggie. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
At the house.
I believe so. Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's what I recall. And Paul arrived at the house after I arrived at the house, I believe.
And the lip biting, which is like a sign of stress, because when we're stressed, our mouths get dry, and moving the tongue, moving the lips is a way to produce saliva. And usually when somebody is lying or, you know, they finish their sentence is when right after they finish the sentence, when we have to observe their body language to see what it is going to look like. A lot of times they will give us signs of, are you buying this? Like, do you believe what I'm saying? So Alex shows a lot here. There's a lot of clusters that Alex shows us. And
if Paul got to the house,
I knew he was going to
around about that same time. He wasn't inside with Maggie. And
nobody asked you a question. There's no question pending, dude.
I went to get to the shower.
So you say if Paul he wasn't inside with Maggie and you? Is that what you said? Mr. Murdaugh, is that what you said?
Sir?
You said if Paul got to the house prior to that, he wasn't inside with you and Maggie? Is that what you said?
I'm saying he was not inside when I went to get in the shower.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, looking back at this data point,
How do you know
808, we see a
that?
little
It's a
blue
big
dot
house.
right there in the middle of the house, don't we?
Yeah, that's what these records show.
Okay.
He tries to be so precise and
And
specific.
it also shows that circle that folks testified to, what the range of what it could
Yeah, that's it.
be within. So, I mean, it clearly could
Look
be.
at that circle. Look at what's right in the middle of that circle. Almost like somebody drew a circle around the house, don't you agree?
Yeah, I do. But also in that circle is where you would park a truck if you pulled up.
Right.
So, and I'm not saying that he wasn't in the house at some point in time there. But when I went to get in the shower, he wasn't in the house.
How do you know?
And he very easily could have been there and been parked in the yard.
See, this type of thing is the argumentative way that he's testifying, and it's
You
just
agree
not
that on page
necessary.
16 that about 8:30 Maggie starts tracking steps again on her phone?
What would
Yes,
would
sir,
be
that's
like a better way to say this? Like, I was getting the shower. Was Paul there? I'm not sure. When I went to the bathroom, I hadn't seen him yet. But this thing that, no, the circle here, but you could have parked here. And just because there's a circle here doesn't mean that the car wasn't there and Paul wasn't there. Like, how do you know? If you're in the bathroom and it's a huge house, maybe he got into the house. Maybe he's in his bedroom, that certainty of answering and to trying to be so precise when, you're not even at the time that is crucial for you yet, because it's still early in the night compared to the time the murders could have occurred. So why are you adding all this? Is that, to me, it seems like that pathological liar need, the need to lie even when there's no reason to lie.
That's what the data shows.
Oops, hit the wrong button. And you would agree with me that about 8:38, Paul's phone shows him back up at the kennels.
Well, yes, sir. I agree that at 8:38, let me see which one. It's hard for me to figure out which one of these rings, but at 8:38, it shows Paul in whichever one of those rings is 56 meters wide. And I have no reason to believe he wasn't at the kennel.
And then 8:44:55, we've already gone through this. That's the kennel video, right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And you would agree with me that it lasts about 50 seconds, correct?
Yes, sir. I agree with that.
And you would agree with me, moving on to page 19, that both Maggie and Paul's phones locked for the final time around 8:49.
That's what the data shows.
That's what the data shows. That's for sure. Which doesn't mean that they have died right there and then, right? And I feel like Alex didn't do such a great job when he testified, because if he had rehearsed, if he did this and he had the time to rehearse and he's so smart and he's a lawyer and he looked at all the data, I feel like he should have spent a lot more time in this timeline, in this part where he supposedly drove there in the golf cart, took the chicken out, put the chicken up, and then just left right in a matter of less than a minute, maybe. Then all these back and forth that he decides to go into with the attorney. It doesn't look believable. It doesn't look sincere. And when it matters, the time of the possible murders, I would even say, if I was in his position, because the prosecution didn't provide a time of death, right? So instead of keep going back and forth and being argumentative, yeah, that is when their phones locked for the last time. But it doesn't mean that they were. That's when somebody murdered them, because at the end of the day, we really don't have a time of death, right, Creighton? You haven't provided that. Not exactly like this, but in different words, this is what I think he should try to include in his testimony, instead of being so worried about being argumentative about every single little thing.
After that, you agree that Maggie's phone around 8:53 shows some steps being taken?
That's what the data shows. Yes, sir.
Data doesn't show who's carrying it, but that's what it shows. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then you would agree with me that from 9:02 to 9:06, your phone finally comes to life and starts showing a lot of steps.
Jumping
I do
jacks,
agree with that.
What were you doing?
I was getting ready to go to my mom's house.
Getting ready to
dancing.
go? I thought you took a shower already. You were just laying down on the couch. What all you need to do to get ready to go to mom's house?
I mean, there wasn't anything to get ready in that aspect, but I was getting ready to go. I was preparing to leave.
So doing what?
I don't know if I got up, went to the bathroom. I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what I was doing.
That's far more steps in a shorter time period than any time prior.
That's
as
what
we've
the
seen from
data
testimony
says.
In this case. So what were you so busy doing?
That's
Going to the bathroom?
no, I don't think that I
Get on the
went to
treadmill?
the bathroom. No, I didn't get on the treadmill.
Treadmill.
Jogging
What a
place?
smart
No, I
ass.
didn't jog in
Jumping
place.
jacks?
No, sir, I did
Ah.
not do jumping jacks.
What were you doing, Mr. Murdaugh, for those 4
I'm
minutes?
glad Alex didn't get
Preparing to
angry
leave from
here
mom's house.
because it
What
could
does
have
that mean? I mean,
could
you're
have
in the front
been
room on that couch where you
the
say you laid
reaction.
down.
That's what
Some
Creighton's
others just
trying
right
to do,
outside.
make
What all
him
are you doing?
angry.
I don't know
so
if I
the
got up and went to
mask
my room,
comes
went to the
down.
gun room, went back in that.
Doing what? You've been so clear in your new story about everything. What were you doing during
Let's
these 4
watch
minutes?
what his face is doing, though.
I disagree with your assertion about
Characterization.
every detail. I don't recall. I know that I was getting up and I was leaving. I was going to check on my mom.
Giddy up.
But specifically what I was doing, I don't know. I know what I wasn't doing, Mr. Waters, and what I wasn't doing is doing anything, as I believe you've implied, that I was cleaning off or washing off guns, putting guns in a raincoat, and I can promise you that I wasn't doing any of that.
No need to remind the jury
Also,
of
during this 4
any
minutes
of
where you got
that.
283 steps,
This attorney's
I don't know
face.
you're moving around a lot, but you're making a ton of phone calls. Because in that same time period, you see this red line right here, where over that 4 minute period, all those
Okay.
steps were taken. That's also when you're calling, making all these phone calls, isn't it, Mr. Murdaugh?
So he's jogging
Yeah, I
in
mean,
place,
phone
making
calls.
phone calls, dancing, doing all
Allow
that
to answer
stuff.
before Mr. Waters steps on him
Whoa,
again with another
Jim.
question. Please.
This
Thank you.
is Southern angry.
All right.
Like Jim is pissed. Please, thank
You're
you.
making all these phone calls while you were taking all these steps. Would you concede that? Where you don't remember what you were doing?
Well, I was making phone calls and that's shown here. At 9:05, I called my dad. You know, I don't know that I was taking steps like you're saying I'm taking steps. I heard the same testimony you heard, Mr. Waters, and, you know, steps can be recorded any number of ways. I don't have a specific recollection of walking around. I don't know if I was hitting my phone like the guy showed or doing whatever that makes steps, but, you know.
So you were hitting your phone like that while you were making all these phone calls?
Hang on, no, sir. What I'm saying, Mr. Waters, I don't know that. I'm just
Look
giving
at
you an
Jim.
example. You're saying that I'm running around taking these steps, and while I'm doing that, I'm making telephone calls. What I will agree with is that this data shows that there was 283 steps recorded on my phone. And sometime during that period, I made certain phone calls.
I love body language.
So not only
There's
whatever
not
it is
anything.
recording
Jim is not saying
steps,
anything, but
you're
he's
also
saying
making
so
a ton of
much.
phone calls, including
He
missed
swallowed the
calls
pen like.
to Maggie, who is 1,100 feet away, supposedly.
You're using the term a ton of phone calls.
Yeah.
What I agree is that I made the phone calls that are listed on these call data records, which, you know, are very normal phone calls for me.
You know why so many phone calls were missing from the log around this relevant time period when law enforcement downloaded your phone on June 10th?
From my phone,
Yeah,
No, I
it's your
don't.
Did you
phone.
delete them, Mr. Murdaugh?
not intentionally.
Just around
So
the time June 7th, all these
unintentionally?
calls were missing. But you had nothing to do with that between June 7th and June 10th.
No, sir, I did not. And I did not delete phone calls from my phone. Mr. Waters,
That
one
was
of the most
a
important
very
things in this whole
strange
thing for me.
thing. That was
is-
a very strange thing because I don't know why he would have done that, but it's true. Like there were text messages to Paul or phone calls to Maggie or whatever happened between Alex and Maggie and Alex and Paul, they were all deleted from Alex's phone. And then they were there in Paul's phone and in Maggie's phone, and they were also found in the Verizon data. So it's strange, like, because even if he's trying to create an alibi and call Maggie at 9:06 to say, oh, look, I tried to call Maggie, so I'm not the murderer. That was the time where her phone supposedly got thrown off of the car window. So what did he call the phone and then looked at the phone, like call the phone to create an alibi for himself, right? Call her to show, hey, police, I'm calling her, so I can't be the murderer. But at the same time, looked at the phone to see who's calling, even though it's himself, and then throws the phone out of the window. And then he deletes that phone call record. So why would he create the phone call record to be an alibi if he's going to delete it? So this is a point that is a little confusing to me still.
Been getting this data that I believe would exist. Phone calls and phone records would be part of that. I've been in enough civil cases and used phone records enough times to know that you delete a
Creighton's
phone
like-
call from your phone, it doesn't disappear. So I can tell you, this jury, and everybody who's listening, that I did not intentionally delete phone calls from my phone.
Yeah, 'cause we started talking
Intentionally,
about you're a
twice.
former prosecutor, correct? And former lawyer doing civil cases. We went through that yesterday.
How angry it makes
Boy, you're
him
busy being on that phone right out of the
when he
gate at 9:02,
says
right?
former.
Objection's overruled.
Am I a
Overruled.
busy bee?
Yeah.
I am using my telephone at, I think I call at 9:05, I start and call my dad, and I agree that I made other phone calls.
And one of the first things you start talking about with law enforcement is these calls that you made to Maggie, correct? You recall that from your first statement to law enforcement?
One of the first things that I said to law enforcement,
Yeah, that's one of the things you talk about. I'm talking about with your interview with Special Agent Dave Owen.
I don't remember that being the first thing we talked about, but
First things.
If Mr. Owens asked me about it, then
No, you brought
Sure.
it up, didn't you?
I did.
You don't recall?
No, I don't recall.
Would you dispute me if I said you brought it up?
Did I brought up what? Brought up what?
Phone, Mr. Murdaugh, your phone.
Phone calls to Maggie?
Yes.
That I brought up phone calls to Maggie to David Owens.
I'm asking you, is that one of the things that you talked about in your first interview with Dave Owen? That you pulled out your phone and started looking at it, that you brought that up? You recall that?
Well, but that's not what you asked Mr. Owens. You asked me, was that the first thing that I talked to him about? And that was the discrepancy. I certainly don't dispute that Mr. Owens and I talked about phone calls. But that's not what you said, so just to be clear.
Well, the real reason, Mr. Murdaugh, is that you as a lawyer and prosecutor are up at 9:02, finally having your phone in your hand, moving around and making all these phone calls to manufacture an alibi. Is that not true?
It's absolutely incorrect.
So that's just another circumstance and coincidence in this particular case. Right around the time that you lied to law enforcement about maybe one of the most important facts in the case.
Comment before the question.
It is an absolute fact that I am not manufacturing an alibi, as you say.
How do you remember so much detail about everything else, but you don't remember what you were specifically doing to generate 283 steps while you're making all these phone calls in the same 4-minute period?
I remember unequivocally, without any doubt, with as clear a mind as I could have at any time, that I never manufactured any alibi in any way, shape, or form, because
That
I did
wasn't the
not
question.
and would
What
not.
were you doing that
hurt my wife
generated
and
these
my child.
steps?
why
So
can't
I
you
know
remember
for a
what you were
fact
doing?
that I never, ever
Whoa,
created an alibi.
angry.
Why don't you remember what you were doing when you were so busy for this 4-minute critical period?
Fight.
I do remember what I was doing.
Other than I was getting ready to go.
Well, that's because that's what I was doing.
Okay. Let's keep
Look
going.
at the face. Alex is like
You made those calls to
fuming.
Maggie in that 4-minute period. You had just seen them
Ooh,
a few minutes ago.
if
When you
looks
say you
could
went down there and
kill.
came right back. Why didn't you just take that quick little left 1,100 yards away and stop by? See why they didn't answer the call. You're obviously wanting to get in touch with them. Why didn't you go down to the kennels that were so close by?
There was no reason to. I mean,
Making multiple missed calls to Maggie, and she's so close. And there's a driveway right there. Why do you not just go down there and say, hey, guys, I'm heading over there?
it wasn't important to do that. Me making those phone calls is simply me letting, I believe I called Maggie and I believe I called Paul, but that's simply me just letting them know that I'm leaving for a minute. I'll be back. The fact that they don't answer is not unusual at all. Now, it is odd. It is unusual that they never call me back. But at that moment, the fact that there's a missed call when I know they're on the property, I mean, that doesn't even register at all. That's perfectly normal to try to call somebody who's on the property and not be able to get them. And as far as not
Sure.
going down there,
That
there
makes
was no
sense.
sense of urgency. Maggie was with Paul, you know,
Yeah, it was just a call. It's
She
not
should be
like
a
he's
safe-
looking for her.
as she could be.
Yeah, she should.
Yes, she should. Objection in the comments, but overruled.
Did you talk with Maggie about going to
Look
Almeda?
at how
and
angry
Red Kennels?
Alex looks, though.
No, I don't believe I did.
Did you talk with
Which
Maggie
is
about going to
appropriate,
Almeda?
you know,
during
even
supper?
if he's not guilty.
I know that we had talked about it. I had talked. I don't believe we talked about it at supper, but we may have. I know that I had talked about that I was going to go over there, and then I decided that I wasn't going to go over there. But
So what was your conversation at supper? Tell me specifically, if you could, please.
I
About
can't,
going to Alameda.
I can't tell you that we specifically talked about it. The only thing that I can tell you we specifically talked about at supper was Paul.
All right.
Oh,
And what was the conversation?
what was the conversation?
Maggie was just concerned. Paul had been having, for a young person, Paul had been having high blood pressure.
Okay.
And he's very resistant to go to the doctor. And this has been going on for a little while, but lately Paul's feet had swollen. And for a 22-year-old to have start having swollen feet concerned both of us, and it particularly concerned Maggie. And we talked about that.
Okay.
Did y'all talk about Mr. Randolph at all?
I'm sure we did.
Do you remember that group text coming in about whether or not anybody was going to go see Mr. Randolph at the hospital the next day?
Do I remember it coming in?
Yeah.
I don't remember it coming in.
You
but
didn't read it till the next day, but
I've seen the data.
why didn't you? Did you ever text the group and say you were going to Alameda at all?
No,
Did you and Maggie ever specifically discuss her going along with you to Alameda?
I don't believe that we did. I know that there was a point in time where I said Maggie might go, but it's highly unusual for Maggie to go and visit just my mom. The whole situation, it just made Maggie sad. And
Sure. That part is very believable. But just real quick to point out, the fact that Alex keeps repeating the questions um, is a big sign of deception, because it kind of seems like, when you're repeating the question over and over and over and over again, you're just trying to get some time, enough time to think about your answer. Another thing is that he has a lot of adapters that he keeps adding on when there's no question pending. Another thing that he does constantly is the lips movement, and also, which is a sign of stress, and also the following greeting around. Yesterday we were looking at this document, which I will share here, it's from a book called Psychopath Free by Jackson McKenzie, and there's like 30 red flags of toxic people, and pathological lying and excuses, right? There's always an excuse for everything, even when things don't require excusing. They make up lies faster than you can question them. They constantly blame others. It is never their fault. They spend more time rationalizing their behavior than improving it. Even when caught in a lie, they express no remorse or embarrassment. Oftentimes, it almost seems as if they wanted you to catch them. And that is another thing with Alex, that sometimes the question is a simple question, and it's like, he seems to be rationalizing, he seems to be lying, and it's like not even necessary to be doing that, and you lose your credibility, and it doesn't seem sincere. So people are just not buying it. And when I look at the gallery, most people, most of the time, either look confused or like they're smirking, because it is a interaction between Creighton and Alex where it's like they're, it's like a measuring contact test, really. And I don't see people really like feeling sorry for him and empathy and feeling his pain, which most human beings would feel if somebody is a victim in the story and if somebody's in that position. So this whole facade that Alex is portraying, and I could be totally wrong, but that's just how it seems. People are not buying it.
She didn't like to go. So
You
I don't believe that we did, but I do acknowledge that at some point I said she might go for some reason.
you told law enforcement on multiple occasions that, first of all, Maggie was planning to stay at Edisto the night of June 7th, correct?
I did say that.
All right. And you also said that you came to find out that she came home of her own accord, correct? You told that to law enforcement. Is that true?
She did come home of her own accord.
That she decided on her own to come home because she was worried about you. Isn't that what you said?
I did say that, and I believe that to be the case.
All right. But since despite what you told law enforcement, we've since seen the text that you actually called her and asked her to come home on the night of June 7th.
No, sir, that's not correct.
That's not correct?
No, sir, that's absolutely not
All
correct.
right. So you heard your sister-in-law, Marion, testify to just that fact of the conversation she had with Maggie, but you're saying that's not true?
I don't believe that's what Marion said.
All right. And your defense put in this exhibit 107, where Maggie texted Blanca and said, Alec wants me to come home.
I've seen that. I agree with that.
Is that up on the screen? Oh, I've got the wrong input here. I'll just hold it up.
Oh, Creighton's going crazy.
You seen this
What?
text?
Did I
I have
catch it
seen
in a
that.
lie?
Mr. Waters, the only dispute I have
And
with
Alex
what you're
is
saying
like,
is you're saying that I
no,
called
wait a
Maggie
second.
and wanted her to come home. I always wanted Maggie to come home, and I would have talked to Maggie about coming home before she ever left to go to Charleston and
What?
to Edisto. And I can tell you this, and I didn't realize this at the time, but I realize it now, that
Look at
Maggie
them.
was already undecided. Now, I didn't know this, but Maggie was
Jim.
already undecided about
Poor Jim.
staying at Edisto. I can promise you that, because Bubba and Grady were
Bubba.
in their kennels, as y'all
Look
well
at
know,
Creighton.
that night. That day, if Maggie was certain that she was spending the night at Edisto, at a minimum, Bubba would have been with her, and probably both dogs would have been with her. It's very unusual for her to spend the night anywhere without one of us or those dogs. So
you're
that
saying-
tells me that when she left that morning, she was already seriously thinking about coming back.
So you're saying that you never called her?
And we know that one of the people in the jury have already come out and said about this, that he just rationalized in his head, because he was like, well, but she went to the doctor, and you can't take the dogs to the doctor's appointment, so that's why she didn't have the dogs with her.
And had a conversation that day asking her to come home. specifically on the night of June 7th, 2021?
Maggie and I had a couple of phone conversations that day. What I'm telling you is that before she left, no, I don't believe we had a phone call about that. We may have discussed it during the phone call, but I didn't make a phone call to her to ask her to come home. I had already told her I wanted her to come home. I always wanted her to come home. You heard Marion say that too, that I always wanted Maggie with me.
Right, you thought enough of it to talk about it with Marion, didn't you?
He's like,
The fact that I wanted her to
"See,
come
I'm
home.
right."
Correct.
Well, sure. I mean, that's what Marion said.
So you're denying that you called Maggie and specifically asked her to come home that night?
I didn't make a phone call to Maggie to ask her to come home that night. I asked Maggie to come home
Argumentative.
long before she ever left.
Gotcha.
And I probably
then
asked her
he's
again
smiling
each time I talked to
afterward.
her, but I didn't make the phone call specifically for that, as you're saying.
Like the way that he's answering just drives me crazy because it seems like you're trying to win a little contest here and you're just trying to be like smarter than the prosecutor, which fine, you might even be, but you're in a position that requires humility and it requires you to be a little bit more sincere. And this whole little game that you're playing doesn't look good. You know, look, even Dick Harputli is like, you know, because this guy talks in circles. It's like word salad constantly.
And to be clear, I'm
Oh,
certain
don't keep
that if
going.
Maggie was
Don't
certain that
keep
she was spending the
going.
night,
Don't
Bubba would have been
keep
with her
going.
and probably Grady.
Or not. They didn't buy it. Gosh, he keeps talking. Look,
Why did you
he's
tell
gonna
law
talk
enforcement
more?
that you found out
No.
after the fact
Good.
that Maggie wanted to come home because she was concerned about you? Why'd you phrase it that way if what you're saying to the jury now was accurate? Why would you phrase it that way?
Because I believe that to be the case.
That you found out afterwards, but now you're saying you knew.
No, I'm saying I found out afterwards why she came home, Mr. Waters. And she came home because she was worried about me.
Oh, now he's gonna
So
try
I
to
want to be
cry,
clear about
right?
that.
Let's
I did
see.
not learn that until I think the day after she got killed.
Lots going on in his
So you're
face.
saying that you found out that after the fact, but you're telling this jury that you knew the things that you just said about her wanting to come home. And you were unaware of what Marion would say at that point either.
No, I'm saying at that time, I had not thought about Bubba and Grady. Since that time, I've thought about that. I'm certain of that. At the time, I thought Maggie was staying at Edisto. All right. She was going to Edisto to do to meet the people.
No, he was
to do the
just
work. Maggie
emotional.
loved to
Creighton
stay at Edisto.
ignored
There's no
it,
doubt about
and
that.
then Alex went
It would not be
right
unusual
back
at
to
all
the
for her to stay at Edisto.
rational response.
But just like every other time, I had already asked her, please come back, come back. Always wanted her to stay
Baby,
with
come
me.
back.
Always. But I did not learn about, and Maggie even texted me, I'll see you in a few hours. But I did not know why she decided to come back
Wow.
until later. That's what
Wow.
I'm saying. And I learned it from Blanca. Blanca actually showed me the text that she sent her talking about being worried about me.
You would agree with me that you sent a text to Maggie at 9:08:58 while in motion in the Suburban, as reflected by the data?
I do. Which was because I couldn't reach them by the telephone and I wanted them to know where I was.
Okay.
Which is what we do.
And you got to Alameda around 9:22?
which.
I believe that's correct.
Go down to it.
No, I don't have any
which?
reason to dispute that.
Alex.
Made some more phone calls along the way.
I did make more phone calls along the way while I was riding.
Called Chris Wilson.
I did call Chris Wilson.
Had a short conversation with him.
Stretch.
Is that right?
Those
I did have a
moments.
conversation for however long the record show.
About 131 seconds. That sound about right?
If that's what the record show, 2 minutes.
Called your brother,
Don't
John
answer
Martin,
like that,
for about
man.
106 seconds, including connection time. Does that sound about right?
That does sound about right.
Arrived at 9:22. Does that sound about right?
It does.
And then at 9:24, you call, that's the landline at Alameda, is that correct?
That is correct.
And then you went inside, is that right?
Yeah, that's
Talking to
right.
Shelley.
That's right. I called the house phone to get Shelley to let me in.
And when you were asked by law enforcement how long you were at your mother's house, you said 45 minutes to an hour. Isn't that correct?
I think I said a couple of different things, but I think at one time I did say that. But, routinely through this thing, I kept
Microphone
saying,
adapter,
when you get this data,
eyeglass
you'll see exactly.
adapter.
When you look at my phone, you'll see exactly. When you do, me giving the times was always given with the thought that, okay, that there's OnStar out there, there's whatever.
Yeah, but like people have mentioned, and I can see that. I think that when Alex was talking to Blanca about the clothes, or when he was talking to this lady about the time, he wasn't really thinking about OnStar and GPS and all of that, because maybe he was just thinking he was gonna get away with it, like he always gets away with everything in his life, or he always got away with everything mostly in his life. So I think that makes sense. And then, and I was just saying the adapters sometimes are movements that we make that are not really necessary, like moving the glasses when you're not really, having trouble reading, or moving the microphone when the microphone is fine, or like touching something, which is just a way to distribute like the stress, to relieve a little bit of stress from your body. So it could be that this topic is a little stressful for Alex.
Had a conversation with Miss Shelley after the fact. You actually asked her to say that you were there longer than 20 minutes.
I heard Shelley's testimony. I
Microphone
believe
adapter
Shelley to be
again.
a good person.
Just did it.
I wasn't trying to influence Shelley on any particular length of time, because at the beginning of this, I believe that data would show what data would show. And for me to tell her to say something when my OnStar is going to show something different,
But it
just
wasn't
doesn't
a
make any
trial
sense.
back then.
So, I can't answer that. What my recollection is that I told Shelley that law enforcement would be talking to her. We may have discussed how long I was there. At that point in time, if I thought I was there 45 minutes, I may have said I was here 45 minutes, but I
Make
can't
it a
tell
little
you.
faster.
And that's the same thing that Blanca testified to, that you talked to her about the clothes that you were wearing. It made her uncomfortable, correct?
Same thing.
Ask that question again.
What?
Similar
I can't
to
hear you.
your conversation
What?
with Blanca that
What
you
did you
testified about
ask
when you talked to
me?
her about the clothes that you were supposedly wearing.
What-
And it
what's-
made her feel
I
uncomfortable. You remember that
can't
testimony,
hear.
sir?
What's similar to that?
Well, that you're
What's
talking about those
similar to
individuals.
that? And that is also something I've noticed Alex doing, like kind of like a little aggressive tone when he asks, "What do you mean?" Like when he was in the car with the two detectives, as soon as he was in the murder scene, and the lady in the back, the detective, said something to him like, "What time did you text her?" And he was like, "What time did I what?" Like the way that he responds sometimes is a little aggressive.
About their testimony in a manner that's inconsistent with what they know.
And I think it's when
don't
he's
think-
being
I don't
confronted
think your
with
assertion is accurate.
something.
You have to understand this. On August the 11th, when I went to meet with David Owens, and in that, David Owens asked me about, he showed me that Snapchat and asked me about clothes that I had on. And
He probably had the
shortly after
rehearsed
that, the next
answer.
time I was with Blanca, I asked Blanca about those clothes because David Owens had asked me about them and made an issue about it. And so I checked with
So he
Blanca to
was
see
ready
what
for
I
this
specifically
one.
asked Blanca, and it was an issue to me. So I got Blanca and I said, I need you to sit down and talk with me about this. This is important. Do you remember my clothes when you came to Moselle that day? And she remembered exactly what she testified to. She remembered that my pants were there. She wasn't sure if the shirt was there. At that time, I think she actually thought the shirt was there, but she was clear that she wasn't sure about that. No, she wasn't unsure, but she didn't remember, but assumed that it was. So that was the conversation.
I thought
that-
you said she
and why I
remembered
was asking
because she
Blanca.
touched your shirt.
Specific about the numbers of that conversation. Is that correct, Mr. Murdaugh?
You dang right. I'm consistent about that because
Dang
a very
right.
short time before that,
Look
David
how
Owens
angry he
is
looks.
asking me questions and telling me I'm a suspect in the murder of my wife and my child and asking me about my clothes. You dang right it was important.
Right.
And you dang right I remember why I went to her and for what reason.
The only thing you're concerned about is yourself. You're not concerned about giving accurate information to law enforcement. Correct? What's the reason for that, Mr. Murdaugh? Why don't you want to give accurate information to law enforcement? Why do you want to talk to these women who both are employed by you or your family and try to influence what they were going to say?
I did want to give law enforcement accurate information.
Except for you being at the murder
I told a
scene.
lie about being down there and I got myself wed to that, but I wanted to give them as much. I knew that I hadn't done this and I wanted to give them as much accurate information as I could. But the reason I went to Blanca is specifically because of David Owens talking to me on August the 11th.
Don't go back. Stop talking.
You see that you're underway about 9:42, heading back.
I did.
9:42 to 9:43.
I do.
This is a good cross. It didn't seem so in the day that it happened because Creighton looks so aggressive, but it is a good cross.
Turned on Moselle about 10:01.
Turned into Moselle at 10:01.
Yeah. Sorry.
It looks to me like I turned into Moselle at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock on the dot, sorry.
Yes, sir.
Oh, not 10:01, 10 o'clock.
At the house at 10:05.
Yes, sir.
And then that's when you went back to the kennels after you came back from Alameda, correct?
I went to the kennels after I went to the house. I went from Alameda to the house to the kennels.
And when you got to the scene, you got out of the car, according to what you told law enforcement repeatedly, and went and checked the bodies, correct? Before you called 911, is that correct?
No, sir, that's not correct.
You're saying you didn't say that to law enforcement?
I don't know what I said to law enforcement, Mr. Waters, but I can tell you this. I pulled up and I saw Agent Paul. I jumped out of that car. And then I went back to my car and I called 911 as quickly as I could. That point in time, when I got on the phone, then is when I went to them and did the things that I did.
Did the things that you
What
did.
you're saying is not accurate.
You're saying that you didn't say very specifically to law enforcement that you went to them prior to calling 911.
When?
After you got out of
When?
the car,
Real quick, he was really red and crying, and now he just like, when?
you told law enforcement repeatedly that you went over and checked the bodies before you called 911.
No, I don't. If I did say that, I don't believe that's accurate. Did I check Maggie and Paul before I called 911?
Correct.
No, sir. That's not. I don't.
No,
it's not
because
accurate.
there was only 20
least that's not what I remember.
seconds.
That's not what you remember saying, or that's not what you say now happened?
No, that's not what.
What
That's not what I
happened?
believe happened.
Okay. But you don't deny that's what you said.
Did I check Maggie and Paul before I called 911?
Correct.
I don't believe that's what I said.
You don't need to keep repeating the look at his facial expression here. You don't need to keep repeating the question, right? Over and over again. I think that if he had come in and just said, I was in shock. After I was in shock, I completely forgot that I stopped by the kennel to help them with the chicken. I knew about the tail. So, I went there. I saw the dogs. I said bye to them. And then I went to see my mom. I was like on the way to my mom, something like that. I was already on the way to my mom. Then I left. The reason why I lied to the police is because I was so in shock about everything that had happened. That time had just stopped making sense to me that night. When I finally remembered, I was afraid that they were going to think that I was a suspect or something because they didn't have any leads and something like that, but the keep, what do you mean? Like the repeating of the question and then the saying that you were paranoid and all of those seem like too many lies and hard to keep a track of if you are the person lying.
Now, I know I checked them, but I don't believe I checked them before I called 911.
There's no question pending. Dick.
Because
Are we
I can pretty well
screwed?
remember.
Yes, we're very screwed.
vividly,
Uh,
when I checked Paul, I was already on the phone
here
with
we go. We're
911.
going to go emotional again.
Looking at this data,
And Creighton's just ignoring it.
to show the vehicle parking at 10:05 and 55 seconds.
Yes, sir.
And 10:05:57, the Suburban arrives at the kennels. You agree with that?
I'm sorry, say that again, George.
At 10:05:57, it shows the Suburban arriving at the kennels.
Okay. Okay.
The 911 call was at 10:06:14,
Okay.
just about 20 seconds later. You agree with that?
I think that sounds right. Yes, sir. I mean, that makes sense. But that goes back to what I'm saying is I pulled up. I saw them. And I know I jumped out of my car. But I believe that before I checked them, in fact, I'm almost certain Then I went back and that's when I went and got my phone and I called 911.
Okay.
And then after I called 911, there was a little while where I don't think there was anything going on. And I believe that is the time period that I went and checked on them.
Just weird that he says there wasn't anything going on, you know.
I don't want to belabor the point, but then what you're saying here today, now that we have this data, that's not exactly how you expressed it to law enforcement in your prior statements. Is that correct?
No, sir, I disagree with that. I totally disagree with that, Mr. Waters. Will you point to what you're talking about?
The pretending to be innocent and confused. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And then look, his serious face again. But it was like, what? Can you point? I don't agree with that. Can you point? Like I'm a poor, helpless guy. Go on, Creighton. Oh, okay, the video. Here's the video. This is the guy that just found his kid and his wife dead.
All right, so
It's so odd. And he keeps making those noises. But why aren't you desperately
Richard
crying?
Alexander Murdaugh. Your last name's Murdaugh. All right. And you go by Alex?
Yes, sir.
And date of birth, Mr. Murdaugh?
May 27th, 1968,
And good phone number for you.
803-942-1227.
All right, sir. And so what was your name?
Yeah, Danny Henderson.
Okay. All right. As I stated, I do own and I'm going to run this.
Would be in shock.
I have to do this.
I understand. I totally understand. So you don't have any problem with it.
So just start it off, take your time.
Like when I came back here, I mean, I pulled up and I could see him, and I knew something was bad. I ran out. I knew it was really bad. My boy over there, I could see it was. I could see his brain. And I ran over to Maggie. Actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first. I tried to turn him over, and I don't know. I figured it out.
Now here he's not crying anymore. And when you do have that type of crying that you can't even breathe, and that it's like usually it's progressive. It's like it gets worse, and then it doesn't just stop like this. And that's something people point out. And people point out that he wasn't crying. He wasn't really crying, which everybody reacts differently, and we don't know how we would react to such a horrible scene. But the fact that he does this and then he stops, it is a red flag.
His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started to try to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I put it back down really quickly. Then I went to my wife, and I could see.
Did you touch maybe all?
I did. I touched them both. I tried to do it as limited as possible, but I tried to take their pulse on both of them.
Take their pulse on both of them.
And I called 911 pretty much right away, and
I called 911.
she was very good.
Okay. So he said he took the pulse. He tried to take the pulse, and he's telling this story as if it is in a sequence, right? So I tried to take their pulse. I played with the phone. I tried to do something with the phone, thinking maybe, but then I didn't. And then I called, and he didn't say and then. He said, I called 911. So it could be that his facts are all messed up and all confused, and he's in a state of shock. But he did say that in a sequence.
I was going to get off the phone to call some family members. I did that.
Because the phone call was pretty long, the 911 call.
What family members did you call?
I called my brother Randy, and I called my brother John. And I tried to call a little boy, a real good friend that's right around the corner from here, but I didn't get him.
around the corner? Is that who you're talking about?
That's correct. But going back to your question, I mean, that's
Now he has an answer.
that's
Let's
the way I
hear it.
remember it, what I said right there. And your question about did I do these things before I called 911? That's not what I said then, and that's not what I remember now.
So you're saying now that you went out, Jack, you came back, got your phone, and that's when you called 911?
I'm not saying that now, Mr. Woods. I am saying that now, but to me, that's what I said then.
I'm not saying that now. I
I told
am
her
saying
I called
that
911
now.
right away. There was no time to do things that I'm talking about doing in the time between getting there and
Yeah, we know that's the
Calling
problem.
When you talked
There
about
was
calling
no
Rogan,
enough time.
you said that he lived right around the corner, correct?
that's correct.
But Rogan wasn't staying there at the time. That's the whole reason the cash was at your kennel, right? You knew that.
Well, Rogan was staying in Buford a lot, but he was home a lot too. I didn't know where Rogan was on a daily basis.
About keeping his dog cash at the kennel when he was staying with his girlfriend and working down in Buford?
Yes, he had asked me that. I mean, that had been sometime before. I didn't know. You're making a big deal about this, Mr. Waters, but that particular night, I didn't have a clue where Rogan was staying or not staying. I was trying to find somebody to come out there with me. I called Randy, I called John, and Rogan was the next best alternative. And Rogan is so close. I mean, Rogan, of all these kids that you've heard, Rogan, Gibson, I mean, Roro is like a Rogan. You prefer when I call him Rogan, is truly like a son to Maggie and I. And he was such
Roro, I mean, you prefer when I call him Rogan, just to piss Creighton off because Creighton keeps pissing him off. So they're both, doing this measuring thing. But this answer also, I don't think it serves him that well because I think either his attorney or somebody else said Rogan was calling Paul's phone nonstop and texting him. So it wasn't unusual that Alex called him back, after he talked to 911 and after he talked to some family. But then Alex is just saying, oh, Rogan was close by and I thought he was there. I don't know if he was there. He wasn't there every night, but I don't know when he was home. And I called him to come and help me with this.
such a good friend of Buster, and he was such a good friend of Paul. And you've been through everything I have. You'll see that 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to this, I ran out of gas when Bus and Paul weren't home. And Rogan's the person that I called to bring me gas.
Nobody's just
The
speaking.
people in the gallery are like,
Without you. We keep playing this.
Around Paul when you walked up.
Blood.
Anything else?
I mean, there was some body things, yes, sir.
I mean, like any other evidence. I know you said the phone fell out of the pocket, but did you see anything else that didn't belong or shouldn't belong or that wasn't part of Paul?
No, sir. Not. No, sir.
About Maggie?
No, sir.
You didn't see anything around them? What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them, and Maggie's a dog lover, and she fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house.
You just testified that in the wake of this, you didn't know what you said to law enforcement. That was what you just said.
No, I mean, I know a lot of what I said to law enforcement, but there's a lot of things in looking back at this video for one, the 911 call for one. I mean, there's a lot of things that I didn't remember.
Okay. But right then and there, just
she's family, right? And she seems to her emotions seem very sincere. And she seems to be honestly curious and concerned and wanting to know what is going on. His faces, most of the times that I pause, are of anger, of challenging, and it's just different. I don't know. I can't identify with this type of body language, but it's just different than the people that seem to be expressing real emotion. Even the people who are in the prosecution side here, either they smirk or they look at they have disbelief in their face, or they do try to, be professional and stuff. But it's just different than what I see in Alex's face. He seems like he stands out.
not long into this interview, you made a conscious decision to lie right there.
Play that again.
You said, I was at the house.
And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house. I left the house. Play.
You want me back up some more?
Well,
Yeah, we can keep listening to it.
Anything around them?
Yeah, we can listen to it.
What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital.
That
My mom gets anxious
victimhood.
when she does. I went to check on them, and Maggie's a dog lover, and she fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house.
You want to
She
hear it again?
fools with the
I don't
You made a
dogs.
conscious decision to lie right there, this early into an interview, sitting in the front seat, correct?
I don't believe so.
You didn't make a conscious decision to lie?
I don't believe
this
that- I don't
conscious
believe that was
decision time
lying
is
at that
so
point.
annoying.
Okay, tell me why not.
Is this when you decided to
Because
lie?
Maggie had gone to the
That
kennels
when
and I
you
was at the
decided
house.
to lie?
Okay.
When
What do
did you
think,
decide to
That was
lie?
not a lie at that point.
I don't believe so.
At what point did you decide to lie?
I'm not sure, but it was in that. It
Was in
was
this interview?
I believe that it was.
Okay, was this interview where you're sitting in the front seat, correct?
It is.
You're not in custody, correct?
I'm not in custody.
They're giving you water, letting you chew tobacco, treating you politely, correct?
They're treating me very
Tobacco?
politely.
So what was it that clicked? When did it, so you said in this interview that it clicked that I'm gonna lie about the most important fact that I know?
I'm not sure exactly when in it that I lied, decided to lie, but I believe it was during this interview. I believe all those things that I talked about, those things that have gone on, the things that people have said to me about don't talk to anybody without a lawyer. Partners all told me that, or a lot of my partners told me that. My dear friend, Chief Alexander, was one that said that. I overheard, I believe it was Sheriff Hill, I'm not positive. I overheard him tell, I believe Mark Ball of Gray Holmes, don't let him talk to anybody without a lawyer. And what I believe
Jim.
is that based on my distrust of SLED and getting in that interview, and I'm not positive about this, but I believe when he asked me, about my relationship with my wife and my son, I believe that's when I decided to lie.
You
But I'm
also
not
left
positive.
out when you had the GSR too, because that's what you testified to yesterday.
That certainly contributed.
And your dope paranoia too, you said that as well, correct?
Well, those
Okay, so this is going to be a big deal after, right? At the end, because he's saying, I believe that when he asked me about my relationship with my son and my wife, that's when I decided to lie. He's saying, I believe. So, we can't blame him 100% to be factual, but Creighton later will say, well, you talked to this officer here, and that was before anybody asked you anything. It was before anybody asked you about any relationship, before anything happened, and you lied to him. So it wasn't because of the relationship question, right? You're just a pathological liar. You just make up lies faster than anybody can question them. And you just spend more time rationalizing your behavior than you improve it, right? That is what this is, Alex, isn't it?
things are what triggered the paranoia that started as my addiction evolved.
And so
So
You're
victimhood,
an
my
experienced lawyer and
parents,
you've been a prosecutor
now
and you
my
took the advice of your law
addiction.
partners that you should have a lawyer there as you read that as, oh, I should lie.
No, that's not an accurate.
Because that's not what that means, is it? For us?
Well, that's not an accurate statement, what you just said, Mr. Waters.
I just repeated what you just said. You said was one of the factors was your law partners, and now you're blaming Sheriff Hill and Greg Alexander told you that you needed a lawyer before you talked to the police, and you took that somehow as meaning I need to lie
No.
as a lawyer and a prosecutor?
No, that's what you said, Mr. Waters, but
How am I mischaracterizing it from your perspective, Mr. Murdaugh?
Because-
I think isn't that what you heard? Isn't that what you just said? Excuse me.
no, sir, that's not what I said.
All right, say it again.
I believe those guys were trying to help me. I believe they cared about me. I believe they thought that I was in a condition such that I shouldn't talk to anybody. I mean, those guys had to prop me up, help me get myself together just to be able to go talk to David Owens. I mean, they were trying to help me. But before that, that was just one of the many things that I believe led to that situation sitting in there where those paranoid thoughts came to me. Them talking about not talking to anybody without a lawyer, Brian Vonnedo, checking my hands, the fact that I got a pocket full of pills in my pocket. I was the person who found Maggie and Paul. My distrust for SLED. All of those factors combined and made me decide to lie. I also know him asking me about Maggie and Paul contributed to that paranoia. All I'm saying is I'm not disputing that I lied. I'm just saying at this point, you're saying I made a conscious decision to lie here. And I'm saying I don't think I made a conscious decision right there.
Okay, so later.
I believe so.
Have you already had your GSR done at this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I had.
And you already talked to your law partners and heard Sheriff Hill. Now you're blaming him and
I'm not-
blaming
no.
Chief Alexander now as well for your lies.
No, sir, Mr. Waters.
You
I'm
just
not-
added that one. You didn't say that yesterday. You just added that one.
You give an opportunity to answer the question.
Can you finish your last answer?
Mr. Waters, I'm not blaming anybody. I accept full responsibility for what I did. What I'm saying is what I believe contributed to me doing that and the reason why I did that. I think those folks were trying to help me. So I don't blame them. I think they were worried about me.
I don't dispute that, but you're saying you took that advice as I need to lie.
Nah, what you're doing is you're isolating one
I'm
single
not
thing.
isolating anything. I mentioned all the factors. You've added some new ones, but I mentioned all the factors that you're blaming your
No, sir.
decision to lie.
That's not what you did. What you asked me is you said, I took my partners telling me not to talk to somebody without a lawyer as a reason to lie. And that's an inaccurate statement. That was one of the factors that went into a series, hang on, Mr. Waters, a series of events, all right, that caused me to have paranoid thinking, all right, and then I lied.
All right. But at some point it happened during this interview that you crossed over. You're saying that you came into this interview intending to be fully disclosing to everything, and something happened in this interview that sent you over the edge. You said, hey, let me lie about the last time I saw my wife and child alive, supposedly, according to me.
I certainly didn't go into that interview, I believe, intending to lie. Mr. Waters, I wasn't capable at that point in time of planning anything or thinking through anything.
So somehow during this interview, all of a sudden those senses came to you to plan and do that.
When I got to thinking in that paranoid way, that normally, as I said, I mean, I could take a deep breath and make it go away. I never had a situation where it lasted more than a matter of seconds. That night, after all those things had happened, it didn't go away in a matter of seconds. And I decided to lie.
And you
Those are the echoes
decided
that you
to
want.
lie. And it would have been a very believable answer if you hadn't lied to the first officer on the scene without any of those factors being an issue, being a factor, right? Before any of that happened, you lied. And it wasn't because anybody asked you about the relationship. And it wasn't because you're paranoid. And it wasn't because you couldn't take a deep breath anymore. And that is a great point that Creighton made at the end. Again, the pathological lying, right? That is just, these are some of the signs, and I highlighted yesterday what I can see Alex doing. The signs of psychopathy in him that I can see, instead of actually addressing the inappropriate behavior, it's always somebody else's fault. Right. Even in this case, he's saying, well, the officer was asking me these things, or, I went there to see Maggie because she was fooling with the dogs. And, I had to see my mom because my mom is sick. Here you find yourself desperately trying to explain how they might feel if you were treating them this way, and they just stare at you blankly. And that's a lot of the times how he just stares at the person, like either when he's lying or even when he's talking about when he stole money from all the people that trusted him, right? The pathological lying and excuses, the explaining basic elements of human respect to a full-grown man. Normal people understand fundamental concepts like honesty and kindness. Psychopaths often appear to be childlike or innocent, or they can put that front, that mask. But don't let this mask fool you. No adult should need to be told how he or she's making other people feel. Selfishness and a crippling thirst for attention, they drain the energy from you. And I think that might be, what their families, especially the closest family, like Maggie, could have felt. But no one can fill the void of a psychopath's soul. Also, you find yourself playing detective, and then we see, everybody talking about Paul playing the detective in the family. No matter what they do, they always seem to have a fan club cheering them on. So the psychopath uses these people for money, resources, attention. This person strategically distracts them with shallow praise, and psychopaths are able to maintain superficial friendships far longer than relationships because they are superficial. They don't have, there's an issue with their amygdala, so they don't process emotions the way other people do. They don't have the significance of, having love for another human being, empathy, or, helping someone else and feeling that significance inside your soul. They don't have that. So to them, it's a mimicking game. It's just a mirroring thing. They watch you and then they copy how other people feel because they know they're different. An unusual number of ex-friends in their past, maybe in this case, it would be an unusual number of dead people. Flattery. We can see Alex doing that to the attorney when he said, we're the same age, but you look much better than I do. Cracks in their mask. There are fleeting moments when their charming, cute, innocent persona is replaced by something else entirely. You see a side to them that never came out. You start to notice that their personality just doesn't add up. And I can see this in Jim's face watching Alex speak. Arrogance. Despite the humble, sweet image they presented in the early stages, you start to notice an unmistakable air of superiority about them. And even as he's being cross-examined for murder of his family and he's facing life in prison, he still wants to win that argument. So the arrogance is uncanny. Now, this one is some signs of a psychopath, usually born with the innate traits. So that brain issue, the lack of the amygdala being able to process emotions. Usually psychopaths are born this way. Difficulty forming emotional attachments. Highly manipulative. Rarely feel guilt. Can appear charming and trustworthy. Educated. Holds steady jobs. Takes calculated risks. Will carefully plan a criminal activity to ensure they won't get caught. And if Alex did this, maybe he planned it. Maybe there's stuff that he was careful with. But even with him being an attorney, being involved in law enforcement, and also being highly manipulative and educated, he obviously let a lot of things escape. Now, what I heard some people who are more like prone to believing that it's impossible that he did that. And the main reasons being that they say that the time where the phone was thrown out of the window, Maggie's phone, the murderer had Maggie's phone, let's say, right? So the murderer has Maggie's phone, he's here, and then the phone is thrown, and the orientation of the phone turns from landscape to portrait, for example. This time right here, Alex was somewhere else, like a half a mile away or 0.75 miles away or something. So to them, it's like not possible that Alex did this. Now, for other people, they say, oh, maybe he had somebody else with him. Or for other people, it's like, why did he go to his mother's house at all? If he was going to commit these murders, why didn't he take his sweet time and just did everything, cleaned up everything that he needed to do, instead of having this tight timeline of a few minutes where he has to get rid of all the guns, get rid of all the evidence, get rid of all the evidence on his clothes, and go to his mom's house and then come back and then call 911? Why didn't he do it before, for example, right? So those are all good questions. So maybe that will be part of the taking the calculated risk, or even being too arrogant to believe that you need that, because maybe he thought he would never even be prosecuted. People would just not have the courage to go after him. It could be. So who knows, right? Only God knows, really.
Ultimately gave to Dave Owen, is that right?
Those are the clothes I gave to David Owens
At what point did you be able to chuck pills you say are in your pocket? When did you do that?
when I was in my bedroom.
When you're in the bedroom?
Yes, sir.
Where'd you put them?
I'm not sure where I put them, but ultimately they would have gone in my suitcase.
So that's when you did it? You have a specific recollection of that?
No, I don't. I just know that I took them out of my pocket.
We watched this whole video. You think you could, would you watch the whole thing? You think you can say, okay, that's the moment where my senses came to me and I decided I was going to tell this major lie?
I don't know that it happened like that, but I mean, I may be able to tell you some things that contributed to it. We watched the whole thing.
I've heard that. I just want to be clear, though. At least on this one, at some point during this interview, when you were able to plan your lie about this event, and you made that decision. But it wasn't what we just played. It wasn't yet. It was some point after that.
I don't think that's a lie right there. Is the reason why I don't think that it's occurred before this, because what I'm saying there, I believe to be truthful. And I know this. I know for a fact that when David Owens asked me about my relationship with my wife and my child, I know that played a role in that. And I believe that, and I may be wrong, but I believe that this was before that.
You ever heard the expression, not telling the whole truth is the same as telling the lie?
Sure, I have.
That's something you understood as a lawyer and a prosecutor?
Yes.
All right.
Ms. Murdaugh, can you state your full name for me, please?
Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
And spell your last name so I can get it correct.
Murdaugh.
All right. And you go by Alex?
Yes, sir.
And date of birth, Mr. Murdaugh?
May 27th, 1968,
And a good phone number for you.
803-942-1227.
All right. And so what was your name?
Yeah, Danny Henderson.
Okay. All right. As I stated, I'm David Owen, and I'm Laura Rutland with Confronting County. I'm misled. I hate to have to do this.
I understand.
Yeah,
I totally
yeah,
understand.
yeah.
So you don't have any problem
Yeah.
with it.
So,
Is this when you decided to lie,
You haven't
Alex?
decided to lie right there, correct?
I knew it.
I don't believe so.
Oh my goodness, this is
told
so
David
annoying.
That you understood that you had to ask questions and you did what you need to do, correct?
That is what I told him.
Dick's like,
Well,
what
it's not
time
yet
is
time
it?
for
I'm
break.
hungry. Gosh.
Ladies and gentlemen, addressing the
Going
jury.
on
Break
forever.
till 2:15.
This
Go to the
is
jury room,
going
please,
on
not discuss this.
forever. Okay, we're just gonna come right back. Jim is like, "Ugh, what did I get myself into? I thought I was just
Murdaugh, you may
defending
step down. You're not allowed
Paul
to discuss your testimony with
on the
anyone
boat
during that.
case."
And Mr. Griffin, will address whatever matter you want to place on the record when we return. Yes. All right, 1 second before everybody moves. So I guess everyone can be seated.
Nobody move. Nobody move.
Yes, sir.
Stop talking to the judge, Alex.
Mr. Griffin, you wanted to put something on the
He
record?
does not
Yes, Your Honor,
like.
thank you. During cross-examination of Mr. Murdaugh, he had testified that in relation to the
Judge Numa is having none of it.
financial crimes, that he had tried to meet with the Attorney General's office, and that on multiple occasions, and that he had, from the get-go, had always been willing to sit down with them. He was specifically talking about the financial investigation and the charges which he received as a result of those investigations.
Judge like not
Following up with that
impressed.
questioning, that answer, Mr. Waters then went to Mr. Murdaugh's testimony and the information he provided about being down at the kennel, and he said you had never provided that information to law enforcement and other people until today.
And
or
Creighton
yesterday.
Waters looks
And
so
Your Honor,
confident.
that is a
Look
direct
at how
violation
he's sitting.
of
He's
Dole
like,
v. Ohio,
I
where the
got
Supreme Court
this. The
said
judge
that
just
he
gonna
cross-examined the
do everything
defendant about his
in my favor.
failure to have told an exculpatory story after receiving Miranda warnings at the time of his arrest is a due process violation. The court goes on to say the defendant
Just look how Jim is so stressed and so upset about this whole violation of the Fifth Amendment. And Creighton is just sitting there with his legs open and like, look at me. And it's unfortunate because the judge has been ruling, for the prosecution constantly and telling the defense attorney to sit down. Like when he's objecting to something that he feels like it's a violation to the Fifth and the Sixth Amendment of his client, it's not a good look. I don't like a lot of the attitudes and mannerisms that the judge has displayed here. I do feel like the judge has made it clear for us that he dislikes the name Murdaugh and what he did do to the law community in his community. But at the same time, for me as someone watching a U.S. citizen, as a defendant being treated like this, it just didn't seem impartial as the judge is supposed to be, right? Just didn't seem impartial to me. And I may be wrong. And also when I looked at older appearances that Alex had before this case ever went to trial, Judge Newman was already there. Like he's been the judge for all of his crimes throughout the whole time. And there's like 99 more crimes, but the murder isn't one anymore because now he's been convicted. So the judge is very annoyed with Alex and he probably dislikes him very much. But still, you need to be impartial. You need to respect the attorneys and you need to treat both sides equally.
post-arrest silence cannot be used against him. Violates due process. And that's exactly what happened on cross-examination. So if you want to I want to make clear the grounds for objection. Also, would like to move to strike the question, strike the answer, and
No
give a
way.
curative jury instruction
Not gonna
that they are not to
strike
consider
shit.
any failure of the defendant to come forward with exculpatory information after his arrest relating
He's
to the
like
murder.
smirking. Judge like smirking.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Clearly, this defendant has given statements on multiple occasions, and that operates as a waiver under Doyle. Additionally, my question was not so limited, as Mr. Griffin
It's
says.
so
and it was
annoying.
in fact the
Creighton
defendant
is
who made a
so
point saying
annoying.
that he had repeatedly tried to talk and put that in issue, at which point this was directly responsive to what he brought up. And additionally, this was also all that was discussed were public statements of his counsel, who was an agent on his behalf and attributable to him. So there's no Doyle violation here. If Mr. Murdaugh had claimed his right to silence from the beginning and had kept that throughout, then the state would be precluded from commenting on the exercise of his right to remain silent. But one thing we know about Mr. Murdaugh is he has not remained silent at any point during this process, and he's the one that brought up this false claim that he had been begging to tell the Kendall story, when in fact he did not do so until yesterday.
Doyle primarily addresses the issue of post-arrest silence. If an accused is silent following an arrest, then it's improper to comment on a post-arrest silence. It does not allow an accused or a person who's suspected to give contradictory information or to voluntarily give a statement or to voluntarily give a misstatement, as has been acknowledged here. I do not find any Doyle violation, and the record is protected. I certainly understand the defense raising any and all possible issues.
Yeah, but you told them to sit down.
You've done it here. The record is
right?
protected, but all motions are denied.
Of course they're denied.
Let's
And
bring the
you're
jury.
smiling right after. Bring the jury. Bring the jury. Oh, Jim. Sorry. It's not a good trial for you guys.
Very good. You may proceed.
May I please call Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Murdaugh, good afternoon. Get that mic up a little bit, please.
Excuse me.
We left off, we were talking about at what point during that interview in the car with Dave Owen that you decided to start lying about the murders of your wife and son.
Here we go.
I'm gonna pick
Yeah.
up
When did you
this
decide?
video real quick. Not gonna play the whole thing.
Decide to lie.
We'll start from 2 minutes and 9 seconds.
We'll just start it out, take your time.
Alex
Like
is
when I came back here,
confused.
I pulled up and I could see him, and I knew something was bad. I ran out.
He's like, how do we get away with this? What is he trying to do?
Boy,
What is he
I could
trying to
see.
pull?
It was
Let's see the crying, the sobbing, the breath. Oh, it's the same thing, the same time. Same thing we just witnessed a little while ago. And then stoic face.
I could see his brain.
Oh, that's so sad.
And I ran over to Maggie. Actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first.
You try to turn
I tried to turn him over,
over.
and I don't know. I figured it out. His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I
Cell phone.
tried to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I
Did
put it back
something
down
with
really
the
quickly.
phone. So
Then
turn
I
him
went to my
over.
wife, and
Did something.
I mean, I
Went
could
to the
see.
wife.
Did you touch Maggie at all?
I did. I touched them both. I tried to
Touched
take, I
them?
mean, I tried to do it as limited as possible, but I tried to take their pulse on both of them.
Try to take both of their posts.
And I called 911.
And then I called
We went right
911.
away. And
Lots
very
of things
good.
to do in 20 seconds, guys.
I talked to her. I told her I was going to get off the phone to call some family members. I did that.
What family members did you call?
I called my brother Randy, and I called my brother John, and I tried to call a little boy, a real good friend that's right around the corner from here, but I didn't get him.
What all was around Paul when you walked up?
Blood.
Anything else?
I mean, there was some body thing. Yes, sir.
I mean, like any other evidence? I know you said the phone fell out of the pocket, but did you see anything else that didn't belong or shouldn't belong or that wasn't part of Paul?
No, sir. Not good. No, sir.
How about Maggie?
No, sir.
You didn't see anything around them? What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them, and Maggie's a dog lover. She fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house.
Just to be clear, you say you hadn't made the conscious decision to start lying about your wife and son's murder right there, correct?
I don't believe so.
Let's continue on.
Mr. Waters, I can't tell you exactly when that decision occurred.
You can't describe to the jury the moment you decided to lie about your wife and son's murder.
I can't tell you exactly when that moment occurred.
What is
I left
it?
the house and went.
You did say earlier that when David Owen asked you about your relationships, that was a trigger point, correct?
Well, that was certainly one of the things that contributed or made me.
He just touched his lips again. Like he said yes earlier. He said, yeah, when they asked me about my relationship with Maggie and my relationship with Paul, that's when I decided to lie because I was like kind of scared about it. Now he's like, well, and then Jim just looks down and he's like touching his leg and like kind of squeezing it a little bit. Like, gosh, this guy, the more he talks, the more he lies. That's as simple as that.
Paranoid.
Okay.
Now, there were already things that had gone on that occurred, as I said, that put me in that mindset.
Yep.
But exactly when I decided to lie about that, I can't tell you.
So the things again, you talked about your joke paranoia, the fact they taken GSR, and you talked about the advice of your law partners and Sheriff Hill and Greg Alexander, and then you talked about your distrust of SLED somehow from this the circumstances and demeanor of this interview right here. Correct?
No, my distrust from SLED didn't arise from this interview. My distrust for SLED arose from a couple of things, and it's really several things. It arose from the way
Creighton's
they've
just
been
gonna
involved
let him hang himself.
SLED had been involved in
Go
the
ahead,
investigation
tell us
into
false
more
criminal
charges.
Yes, tell us about
they've
that
been involved
story
in-
with your
there was an
friend.
issue that had
Yes,
gone
because
on.
at the end of
There's
the
some rumors
day,
about Buster and Paul.
none
They've
of
been
it
involved in
matters
that.
because
where,
you lied to the first officer
Buster and
that
Paul had
was
anything
there,
to do with
and
what I'm talking
none of
about.
this had
and
occurred.
SLED never said that.
So
They
Creighton's
told
just
the lawyer
like
that. They never say
waiting
that.
for his
And there'd been
time
another incident where
to
SLED
say
charged
that.
Greg Alexander, my
Creighton's
friend in
just
this case,
looking
they
like,
charged him.
sure.
And in fact,
Yeah,
I thought the
whatever.
agent that was involved in that was David Owen, but
Okay.
the charges against Greg Alexander were they were so wrong that my dad and I made a conscious decision, even though he was a career prosecutor, to make a decision to go to the courthouse and sit with Greg Alexander while his trial went on because it was a while back,
You don't know if David Owen was at SLED 10 years ago.
No, I checked on that because that night, the officer who was involved in that case in bringing clearly manufactured charges against Greg Alexander.
You're saying the night before you sat down for this interview, you were asking somebody about whether or not something about Greg Alexander 10 years ago in the wake of what had occurred?
Oh, no, I didn't ask anybody.
Okay, so that wasn't what you were discussing when you were sitting in this court.
No, I wasn't discussing that. I'm just telling you that I thought David Owen was the same agent that was involved in that case. Now, I learned later, because I checked on it, I learned later that it was a different David SLED agent, first name David with a different last name. I learned that later. I'm just saying that was all part of that process going on in my mind.
So you're saying that you're sitting here right now thinking that this Dave Owen and this circumstances and demeanor of this interview, you're thinking that guy had been involved in the prosecution or investigation of your friend 10 years ago.
I did.
Okay, so here's a new one you just mentioned to us, correct?
No, that's not a new one. That's part of
The circumstances are new. I mean,
No,
that's fairly
no.
specific, don't you think?
Well, no, sir.
I mean, the story keeps evolving. Keep going.
No, you asked me about this,
Keep
Mr. Owen, but I said
going.
it's part of this
Keep
whole.
hanging yourself.
Mr.
Go
Waters,
ahead.
The whole part of this whole process involved my distrust for SLED. That was a big part of my distrust for SLED.
Yeah, we can all see it on your face in this interview, can't we?
I don't know.
Well, that's a stupid point.
But you said
Really.
what you just said a little bit ago, that wasn't the lie. That wasn't conscious decision. Yeah, so let's keep going.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I don't believe that it was. I don't
Okay.
know exactly when
All right.
I made the decision to lie about that.
All right.
Right?
When you see it, let me know, okay? We'll go forward.
To my mom for just a little while. Tried to call her, wouldn't laugh. Texted her, no response. When I got back to the house was obviously nobody was in there, so I figured they're still up here fooling around. Paul was going to be getting set up to plant. Our sunflower seeds got sprayed and died, and he was refiguring to
Okay,
plant the sunflower
why
seeds.
does this
So
matter?
I came back up here
What the
and
heck?
drove up and saw
Sunflower seeds. Just
and called.
what? What's
Had
happening?
Maggie and Paul been arguing over anything?
No,
What was their relationship like?
wonderful,
Wonderful. How about yours and Maggie's?
wonderful. I mean, I'm
Wonderful.
sure we had little things here and there, but we had a wonderful marriage, wonderful relationship,
And yours and Paul's relationship?
as good as it could be.
As good as it could be. Could
How
be
was that?
better. Could be worse.
22.
So that was the moment right here, that line of questioning. Just asking some very general questions about
That
the
when you
relationship.
decided to lie.
You mentioned that before, didn't you, Mr. Murdaugh? Is that the moment right there? Is that
Right
the look on your
there?
face when you decide to lie
That's
about
when
an
you
important fact in your
decide to
life and son's murder?
I don't know, as I said, Mr. Waters, I don't know the exact point that I made that decision.
You mentioned that very exchange is somehow triggering you to lie about the last time you saw them lie.
No, I'm not saying that that's what made me lie. I'm saying this whole set of circumstances caused me to
Caused
be
me
in a state
anxiety.
where I had paranoid thoughts.
Paranoid thoughts.
That normally, Mr. Waters, I could take a deep breath and make go away in
Right, we heard
a
that.
second or 2 seconds or 3 seconds
We
at the
heard
most.
you say
Now,
that.
this night, I wasn't able to do that.
Maybe you mean panic attacks? I don't know.
But
Paranoid.
all of those things that I mentioned, I believe contributed to that.
Okay. Any more you want to add now since you keep adding?
I'm glad to answer any question you have.
I mean, I'm asking you. I mean, the factors have gone from yesterday to today, and now even after lunch, we got some new ones. So anything else you want to add right now as to factors?
Whoa.
Mr. Waters, I don't believe that I've added any new factors. I believe that's what I said yesterday.
Just
Right.
pissing him off.
I've explained some of those factors because of your question.
Don't keep
I don't believe I've
talking.
added
There's
any
no
factors.
question pending.
All right, let me move this forward just a little bit.
Okay, so most of this was stuff from between a couple of them, but not.
You talked about yesterday in great detail about the boat case, which you brought up on the 911 call and to Daniel Green, and then of course in this first interview, correct?
I did mention the boat wreck.
Right, and you described that. Do you remember what you said in this interview about the boat wreck?
Not specifically.
Not specifically the other people involved in the boat wreck? You don't remember specifically? Do you remember specifically? I guess you said no.
I remember talking about the boat wreck, and I know that I talked about the boat wreck.
All right. Well, I'm gonna play now from 1714.
Any direct threats between any of the people on the boat specifically, but I do think there's been a small amount of yip between a couple of them, but not recently.
What was the term you used for that? Small amount of yip?
Yeah, and just to be clear, Mr. Waters, there was never, ever a point in time where I thought that the people that were involved in the boat wreck did this to Papa and Maggie. I've never thought that.
All right. I never thought that, but it's literally one of the first things that you said out of the 911 call.
No, that's not what I said. I never, ever, ever under any point in time believed that those kids that were riding in that boat or their parents or their families, I didn't believe that any of the families, the people that were involved in the boat wreck had anything to do with hurting Maggie and Paul.
Okay.
But I can tell you that at that time, and as I sit here today, that I believe that boat wreck is the reason why Papa and Maggie were killed.
Okay.
He
And I'm
just did, like, I believe that boat wreck, like 2 little tongue movements there. Very strange, very strange. Just why, right?
I believe that.
It was random vigilantes, the 5-2 vigilantes, huh?
Now, what I believe, Mr. Waters, is I believe that when Paul was charged criminally,
Lots of mouth adapters.
there were so many leaks,
Lots of stress in the mouth.
half truths,
Prejudice all
half
over.
reports, half statements, partial information, misrepresentations of Paul that ended up in the media all the time. And when I tell you the social media response that came from that was vile, the things that were said about what they would do to Papa, they were so over the top that nobody would believe anybody would get on social media and do that. But I believe then, and I believe today, that
Lots of
the wrong
tongue.
person saw and read that.
Okay.
Some may say he's the wrong person. Some may say that because of his need to be important and his ego and the need to be of a prominent family and having a good name and having that front in the community of being such a perfect family, powerful family, a family of influence, that when Paul went through the boat wreck and killed Mallory Beach, unfortunately, a very beautiful young girl, that it just turned so many people against Paul and his family as an extension. So his face is of anger here, and it might be because of his ego, because of the way people were referring to his family after the boat crash, or it could be because he read that and it just woke up a monster inside of himself. I don't know.
Because I can tell you for a fact that the person or people who did what I saw on June the 7th, they hated Paul Murdaugh and they had anger in their heart.
Just every single word here, he had to use a adapter. Like every single word, he needed to do a tongue movement, a mouth movement, something to produce saliva, which could be a sign of stress. We get stressed when we're lying, but just very, very strange. We always wonder why. Why is something changing from the baseline? Why is his body language different from what he's just talking about, something that we know for sure are facts?
And that is the only reason that somebody could be mad at Paul like that and hate him like that.
Gotcha. All right. So we got now.
But that's why I did then believe it was the
And
boat
it
wreck,
keep
and I
going.
believe now that the boat wreck
All right, so we
had
got-
something to do with it.
All right. So we've got random vigilantes because of the boat wreck.
No, I don't know that they're random vigilantes.
Well, you just said it wasn't a family or a kid, or
No.
the kids of the family. Of the
Now
kids
he
of the-
was red and crying. Now he's white again. His face just turned white again. And he's just going to go, I think, either with the anger that is, inside of him when he talks about this boat crash. It really, really bugs him. And
boat wreck.
let's see.
So you're saying it's somebody off of social media. And you don't have any evidence of that, do you?
No,
You just believe that. You're telling that jury that as you try to explain the lie that you told
And
the first time
also towards Creighton, who is, pushing him.
yesterday. Isn't that right?
No, sir, that's not right.
It's not right. All right. Well, let me ask you a question then. So what you're telling this jury is that it's a random vigilante,
That's
the
your term.
12-year-old, the 12-year-old 5-2 people.
It's no 12-year-old, you dumb I hate that. I hate the 12-year-old reference.
that just happened to know that Paul and Maggie were both at Moselle on June 7th. They knew that they would be at the kennels alone on June the 7th. They knew that you would not be there, but only between the times of 8:49 and 9:02.
That's a very good point.
That they show up without a weapon, assuming that they're going to find weapons and ammunition
We don't have a murder weapon, so he could have easily said something about that.
there, that they commit this crime during that short time window, and then they travel the same exact route that you do around the same time to Alameda. That's what you're trying to tell this jury?
Now, I was actually very curious about that, the route to Alameda, because for some reason I was questioning, like, is that the only route, like, for him to leave the Moselle property, which is like a huge property? Is that like a main road or something where the phone was found? Is that like where everybody, the murderer, Alex, everybody will be traveling back and forth? Or like Creighton is saying here, is it like one of many roads and it's a coincidence that the murderer and Alex traveled in that road? Because that would be a bad factor.
You got a lot of
For
factors
Alex.
in there, Mr. Waters, all of which I do not agree with, but some of which I do.
Okay. It's like, all right. Whatever, Alex, right? Whatever.
You testified earlier that after this happened. Well, let me back up just real quick. When you were driving to and from Alameda, why were you in such a hurry? Why are you rolling 70, 80 miles an hour down that dark, beat up road?
I wasn't in such a hurry.
You weren't?
No, sir.
I mean, 70 is not that fast. You know, we have I-95 interstate here, and 65 is the speed limit, and 70 doesn't feel bad. I don't like to speed, and I can do 70 no problem. Now, when it gets to 80, I feel like that's a little too fast for me. But you know, he's in the farm area. He's in like a dark road at night. Nobody's there. Like, sure, I have no problem with that speed limit, with that speed that he was doing, actually.
Show you what's been marked as States 573. See if you recognize this.
I did.
Tell the jury what that is.
It's Max car,
Well, what's in front of?
the house that was up,
And what's between the house and the Mercedes?
the golf cart.
Is that where it was on June the 8th? Do you recollection?
No, sir.
Where was it?
I mean, it was near there, but that's not exactly where it was. No, sir.
Okay, where was it?
Where we would normally park it would be a little bit closer to the shed. I mean, a little bit closer to the house, to the bushes.
Right,
When was that photograph taken?
do you recognize when it was taken?
No, I don't recognize. No,
You
sir.
wouldn't dispute that it was around the time in the aftermath. of the
Yes,
murder.
I dispute.
Aftermath being when?
I'm asking you.
A day, a week, an hour?
I wasn't there, Mr. Murdoch. Do you recognize those?
I recognize the car, I recognize the house, and I recognize the golf cart. But
Don't recognize the
that
picture.
is not, that's not exactly how
So
it
you can't
would have been
introduce
that night.
what?
Can you describe to me then where it would be different?
Well, it would be more in line with,
Then he's like, sure, it would
first things
be
first
this
is
way.
when we drove the golf cart, or when I drove it for sure, and I believe when the others drove it, you would come in and you would go across the little brick walkway that's in front of this. So if I would come in and gone this way, or I would come in and gone this way. This is not a place that any of my family would have
Now,
normally parked.
why doesn't the prosecution have the photo introduced by one of their witnesses and authenticate it? Now, Alex can just say, no, I don't, I have no idea. You could have taken that yesterday. You could have taken that, you know, a week later. You could have rearranged the cars. I can't tell you this is an accurate description.
And so what I'm assuming is it's obviously taken at daytime. And what I'm assuming is it was taken when SLED came to the earliest it was taken was when SLED came to the house the next day, which I believe the testimony is in the afternoon. And at this point in time, that golf cart
Creighton's
I
like,
would
give me
assume
the
it's
photo back. Give it
several
back.
times.
Give it
That's
back.
not how it
Well,
was.
where did you
Give
leave
it
the golf
back.
cart when you got out of it around 8:49?
In the manner in which I just talked about.
Okay, well, help me out again so I understand. You would come around this way or that way, but where would it end
It would
up?
have been in this picture it's facing to the right.
Oh, I got you.
The night that I drove it, I believe I parked it facing to the left.
I understand.
Would be customarily how I did it. And I believe I did it that way that night.
Okay. Well,
And that is how I would have gotten into it.
Oh, that's a very specific memory. Thank you. All right. At this
Well,
time,
that's
state
how
the
it
golfer
is.
at States 573 now.
You remember that
Remember that?
very specifically, but you
That's
don't
what I
remember what you were doing in 906 or 904 to
And see,
906.
Mr. Waters, you can see in the picture now that you bring this up on the screen, if you look to the right, you can see the actual steps. And just to the left of that would be where the little brick patio starts. So where I would normally park it, you would roll across those bricks and the end of the golf cart would be just past those. And we all normally parked it that way because the way you charge this golf cart is if you see that back seat that's sitting, you can see the edge. This is a 3-seat golf cart, and you can see the back seat. And a lot of golf carts have the charger. This sits on the floor or something. This golf cart has a charger that's plugged in and a part of the golf cart. So you flip that seat up, and it plugs in. And the outlets are right up there by the door.
Very
Anything else you want to say
specific.
about that?
I'm going to answer any questions you have, Mr. Waters.
Well, I appreciate all that information.
Sustained.
Objection to the comments.
It's just never parked that way.
Stop talking, Alex. That's how you got into this trouble in the first place.
Now the computer back, please. What's up? Mr. Murdoch, I'm going to put up the second interview. This would have been June the 10th. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I do want to go through a couple things with you, okay?
Anything you want to do, Mr. Waters?
Anything you want, Creighton. We're best friends. Wow, this is in like
I apologize. I gotta have
1.75
myself do
speed.
one last thing on the first one.
Imagine if it was normal. That would have been like an hour of him flipping the pages. Come on, come on, come on. Creighton. Creighton, hurry up.
For
Dude,
the record, I'm going
I forget the guy's name.
to start at 23:55. This is the first interview.
Amy's been having trouble with her.
okay, go.
She's been having trouble with her stomach and her tooth. I'm not positive. It was sort of a routine visit, and I can't remember. She told me the name of it, and I want to say Gordine is who I think she saw.
Godiva.
So was she back home around supper time? Or
Um,
6 o'clock, 7 o'clock?
I don't think she got back quite that early. I think she got back a little bit later than that.
Okay. What did you do? Were you in the office or?
No, I was home. I came home, followed down, messed around. I was up at the house. I laid down, took a nap on the couch, probably, 25, 30 minutes. I got up, I called Maggie, didn't get an answer, and I left to go to my mom's. She said she might ride with me, but she normally doesn't when I go over there. And I think I texted her.
There, when you repeated the lie that you decided.
Was that the moment that I
Was that the
decided
moment you
to lie?
decided to lie to me on Dave Owen?
I don't know. As I told you, Mr. Waters, the exact moment that I decided to lie, but at that point in time,
But you did lie to
obviously,
her, correct?
I did. And she's very good about answering the phone, so that was odd, or calling me back, so that was odd, but it wasn't that big a deal.
Is that when you decided to lie? Is that what we're doing? We're doing the whole when did you decide to lie thing? All right.
All right, I'm going to go to the second interview. It's been previously admitted.
Okay, let's go to the second interview. Let's go.
Let me ask this before we started. You stated earlier during your direct testimony that after these crimes happened, you were around family, family was around you, your law partners were around you pretty much every minute after that, correct? Every waking minute.
Every
Didn't you
waking
say that
minute.
yesterday?
Yes, they worked for a long time.
All right. And this second interview was 3 days later, is that right?
That's correct.
And in no time with any of your close friends and law partners and family, do you confess the truth? Do
No, I did not.
you say, hey man, I think I messed up. What should I do about this?
No, I didn't.
You
You're
didn't
not telling
say
that
it.
lie to anyone, are you? Until yesterday.
Excuse me?
Yes.
You're not telling that lie
correct.
to anyone until yesterday, are you?
Not telling what lie?
It wasn't a lie. It was the truth. But okay, whatever.
Saying I tried to tell somebody that I was lying?
Now he's gone. Alex, he's not interested. Creighton's just disregarding Alex, and that must be a sim off.
Well, hang on.
Just disregard him. Just
And
All right, I'm gonna move this to approximately.
oh, I don't remember
24:56.
this one. This interview, I don't remember. Let's see.
went to go to
Is he smiling in the car, or what's going on
Red
here?
King, getting
Correction, at 12:28.
him, he doesn't like to go to doctors, making him go get his blood pressure checked. His feet had swollen up recently. So, that was a big, huge deal. We hung around the house for a little while. I know that Maggie went to the kennels. I don't know exactly where Paul went, but he left the house too.
Okay. How did Maggie get down to the kennels?
I don't know exactly.
Like
But
this
on normal
side
occasions,
seems
she
to
would
be
drive a
smiling a
buggy,
little bit.
drive a four-wheeler, or very common for her to walk.
Okay. How about Paul? What's
Paul wasn't much of a walker, but he would use all of the others.
okay?
But I mean,
Could be anyway, you know. I don't know exactly. I wish I could help you with that.
So
And then he goes like, I wish I could help you with that. Like all these little subtle movements we make, especially after we're done with this sentence, it could be like an adapter. Like the body just needs to relieve the tension somehow, right? The body relieves the tension either through an adapter, moving something. But this in his face, as soon as he says, I wish I could help you with that. So you don't wish you could help me with that, right?
and went down to the kennels.
Well, Maggie went to go to the kennels,
And Paul left.
and I'm assuming Paul left
Okay.
because of
Gotcha.
what happened. I mean, I'm assuming Paul
Yeah.
went to the kennels.
Okay. And what did you do once Maggie and Paul left?
I stayed in the house,
Okay.
and I was watching TV, looking at my phone, and I actually fell asleep on the couch.
Okay. And what time did you?
I don't know exactly what time I woke up, but when y'all get my phone, I think one of the
Starts to
first things I did
itch
when
the
I got up was call
leg.
Maggie
Mhm.
because I
Lots of itching the leg, and like now he's really lying. We know that, but interesting to see.
was going to my mom's.
Mhm.
And I know I texted her because I checked my phone. And what time did we say the text was, Jim? Like 9:06.
I didn't see it. Yeah, I got it written down for you.
I said you got it
Yes,
right,
yes,
didn't I?
yes, I got it.
So, I texted her. So I called her just before that.
Mhm.
And,
Again, the
she,
leg.
She didn't answer at that point. And I left to go to my mom's.
Okay.
Y'all just have to look. I'm not sure if I called Paul.
Well, and that's why we're getting phones so we can nail down times and,
Right.
and everything.
Hmm.
That's all
Interesting.
that was lies, wasn't it?
The part about me not being at the kennel was a lie.
Also, not knowing that Paul went down there, not being sure, that was a lie too, wasn't it? I mean, you're putting some detail on this thing, aren't you?
Not knowing when Paul left. Everything about me not going to the kennel was a lie.
You were able to just do
You're
that
putting some detail on this thing.
so easily and so convincingly and so naturally, don't you?
I mean, that's not
Yeah.
for me to judge.
That's true.
That is true. That is not for you to judge. Mm-mm-mm.
It's an odd story.
I'm gonna get where I'm going.
Feel right now.
So do y'all have any good clues?
So we're trying to put a rush on that to get an answer quick, and hoping that's going to tell us something.
About evidence, I mean, is it things you think are going to be helpful?
Well, I mean, like the shot shells out there, the casings, the DNA swabs that we took from the door handles, see if anybody touched the door handles, any other places that we think somebody may have touched while they were out there. We're trying to collect DNA from that and analyze that. Which at the conclusion of this, what I'm going to also ask is that we get a local swab, the DNA swab from you. Your DNA is going to be there, but we need to eliminate it once it's developed.
Itch in the face.
No problem.
I mean, we
Again, when he's saying your DNA is going to be there, and then he just goes like this.
have talked to close to 100 people trying to track people down, and we're still tracking people down, and that's why who
Readjusting the
with-
I want to tell you one
posture.
thing while I'm thinking about it. Paul was really an incredibly intuitive little dude.
Mhm.
And I mean, he was like a little detective. And
Whoa, little
Is
detective.
that what you said?
That's what I said.
But you said you never
He
called
was
him
very
that.
intuitive, like I said.
And that was what Mary described as
so
Maggie's term for how he was and keeping
We're so
tabs on your
confused.
pill usage. Wasn't that correct?
That was what Maggie said about him.
For some reason, you decided to bring that up in this interview, didn't you?
I mean, that was a trait of Paul's personality. I mean, I think anybody who knew him would tell you how intuitive he was.
But you said detective.
All right. For the record, I'm at 4630.
well, thank y'all
Yeah.
very much.
So,
Mr. Rabbit, you don't have to call me Miss. You just call me. Thank you for that.
When you and Paul got back in the house, Miss Maggie's there, and y'all eat supper, which has been prepared. And you said you lay down and took a little nap. And when you got up, Maggie and Paul was gone, or did they leave when you lay down?
I believe that. I'm not sure.
Avoiding eye contact, and the whole time it seems like his lips are forming a smile. And we are watching this at 1.75 speed, which I think it even helps even more to realize how the body language is so damning sometimes, because you can see the movements, you can see the blink rate increase, you can see the smile. Whereas if this was in a normal speed, we might not be able to notice this.
But they weren't there when you woke up around the 9 o'clock mark or so when you made your call to Maggie to let her know you wanted to.
Nobody was in that
Almost like the blink rate is like this.
house when I left.
So we're just trying to narrow that. The last time that you saw Paul and Maggie when y'all were eating supper.
Yes.
Now he's moving his leg, which is like a kind of like a pacifier movement, almost like a calming movement we do sometimes when we're stressed. You know, it could be like, you know, you're like caressing something, or in this case, he's just like, you know, back and forth with his leg. Lots of things going on in his body here.
Your answer was yes, sir. Is that correct?
That's correct.
This attorney's face is so funny. Let's go, Creighton. Come on. Chop, chop, man. And do two speeds. Let's see what happens. He's still not saying anything. See, all this time. Whoa,
About to go to the August 2021 interview, but between that June 10th interview and the August interview, you were not working very much. Is that correct? If at all?
No, I definitely wasn't working very much. I think I was working a little bit, but no, not very much at all.
Did you go to Johnny Parker to borrow $250,000 in order to cover the Ferris wheel fees?
I did.
You did?
I did.
Did you tell him what that was for?
No, I did not know what that was for.
Did you go to Russell Laffitte at Palmetto State Bank and get $350,000 in order to help cover some of the Ferris fees that you had taken to send to Chris Wilson?
I did.
And did you get those fees before you signed any paperwork or documentation?
I've heard testimony about that in this case, but I can't tell you the specifics of that.
You don't recall that?
Do I recall when I signed paperwork? No, sir.
You don't recall that you got the money a month before you had to sign the paperwork?
No, sir, I don't recall that.
Call your phone in the console. but
I'm not
you don't
disputing that, but I don't recall it.
I want to
Did
get
you go to
350
your best friend, Chris
without
Wilson?
paperwork.
and convince him to cover $192,000, the remaining $192,000, in order for him to send that email to your law firm as if those fees had been there all along?
I spoke to Chris Wilson and did not have the full amount of the fees, and I got Chris Wilson to put the remaining fees in his trust account.
And when you did that, you didn't tell him the truth about your life. You just asked him to cover you,
I
correct?
did not tell him.
And he agreed to do that because of his belief of who you really were, or who you thought you were.
He agreed to do that for whatever reason. I assume that was a big part of it.
And once that $600,000 was transferred, Chris Wilson sent an email to you saying those fees have been there, were in his trust account, correct?
That is correct.
And then you forwarded that email to Lee Cope and Gene Seconder, correct?
I know I forwarded it to Jeannie, and I've heard that testimony about forwarding it to Lee Cope, so I believe that's correct.
Pathological.
I get it off of DSD.
Because at that time, there were limitations on how much I could borrow because Mags was passed. And so
Because Mags what?
I was limited.
Oh, passed. Okay.
I couldn't get a loan against Moselle and had to get a loan against Palmetto State. Against Edison.
Don't you have like right of survivorship or something when she passed?
Go on to the third interview.
Yours? This is
right, I'm
Creighton
gonna go to
2 times
1745.
speed. Okay, this is him being fast. I'm gonna take a nap. Gosh, which interview is this? Oh, this is the one. Okay, let me make this a little slower here. You can see this go. What's going on here?
You've seen this, so I mean, again, you're repeating the same lies over and over again,
I did.
effortlessly and convincing.
You're
I
repeating
don't
the
know
same
about that.
lies.
I can
Yes,
see
I
it there.
did.
Agree with that.
Nobody yelled at you.
Nobody yelled at me. Nobody, none of these guys were ever discourteous to me. Like,
Good point.
Nobody what?
I said, none of those guys were ever discourteous to me. You made a comment earlier that David Owens was mean or something about being mean, and he was never mean to me.
But they lied. Yeah, the guy that
But you decided to lie in
falsified
part because you distrusted
the
David
blood
Owens.
splatter.
I distrusted SLED in general, and I particularly distrusted who I thought was David Owen at the time.
Is it blood
not to
splatter
be
or
David Owen.
blood spatter? I think it's spatter, but I always say, oh, the blood splattered all over the place. So anyways, but the guy who lied to the grand jury, this is an opportunity Alex could have taken to say, they were very nice guys, but they did lie, to put me in this situation.
So wait a minute, I want to be clear. You're saying now you thought that this was some David Owen that had something to do with Greg Alexander 10 years ago.
No, sir. And I'm not saying that now. I said that all along.
Oh.
The person that I saw and watched in Greg Alexander's trial that
All
was
right,
clear
let's
to
go to
me
your story.
was just, it was terrible what they did to Greg Alexander. And the person at SLED who was responsible for that was a guy named David. Right? And I'm not even getting into his last name. I thought that David Owens that night was that guy. Later, down the road,
Did
And
you?
it was a while.
Okay.
I checked into that and I found out that I was mistaken, that it was not David Owen. It was
So
a
we went
different
back
guy.
and we spent a lot of time going through that first statement. You're telling me now that you were sitting there thinking that this was a completely different guy the whole time, and that was on your mind during that entire interview.
Yes, at the time,
All right.
I thought that David Owen, no, I didn't think David Owen was a different person. I thought that David Owens was the person that my dad and I had watched. Just, I mean, my dad and I truly thought evidence was
You said that
manufactured,
part.
and I thought it was David Owen, and I was wrong about that. But that's what I thought that night.
Any other factors or details you want to add about your decision?
I want to answer any question you have,
No,
Mr.
no, I mean,
Waters.
any more?
Do you have any more questions?
No, I mean, any more about your decision to lie. I mean, I just want to, let's get it all out now.
Do you have any
you have any
more
questions, I'll be glad to answer.
questions?
All right, well, I do. Tell me about the replacement blackout. You initially told law enforcement that you weren't sure whether or not there was one, correct? Correct?
Oh, no, sir, you're absolutely wrong about that.
What did you say then?
Shortly after this, it became being told that Paul's gun had been stolen. And the one you heard talk about being stolen from the thing. And I'm not sure how I learned this, but I learned that somebody, I believe SLED had gone to John Bedingfield, who made those guns, and could only find paperwork for 2 blackouts, one of which they were saying was stolen in 17. And that's what they were telling me. And I was certain, and told them that I was certain that there was a third one.
But initially, in June 8th and June 10th, or June 10th, you were saying that you thought that y'all replaced it, and then you kind of wavered and then eventually said you did replace it, correct?
I don't believe that's correct. No,
You
sir.
believe that's correct?
No, I don't believe that's
Did you
correct.
say to law enforcement that you thought that the third gun, the replacement blackout, had gone missing in Christmas of 2020?
It did go missing in Christmas of 2020.
So you're telling them that one also had been missing 6 months prior, correct? Answer my question first, and then you can explain. Did you all tell law enforcement that that gun had been missing since Christmas time?
I told law enforcement that when we looked for it at Christmas time, we could not find it.
Okay.
And that was accurate. We looked for it when we were trying to shoot hogs, when we had a group
That
of people out
seems
there. And we could
believable.
not find it.
Okay. But you now know that it was there.
Very
It's like courtesy.
straightforward.
I know, sir. I know that Will Lovin and Paw had it
Paw
right
Paw.
before turkey season, like Will Lovin testified to.
So it was around, actually.
It was around there at some point in time there. Yes, sir.
So you're saying the guy stole it a second time, or you just don't know?
No, I'm not.
The 12-year-old stole it a second time?
The 12-year-old.
I never said a 12-year-old stole any gun. Mr.
Sorry,
Waters.
5-2 people stole it a second time?
I don't know that it was stolen. I just know that when we looked for it at Christmas time, we couldn't find it. And I know this. I know
Great
that
answer.
I hadn't seen
I
that
don't
gun
know what
in a
happened.
long time.
Just couldn't find it.
I've heard a testimony that people who were at my house using guns and hunting with us all the time, Rogan, Buster,
Roro.
they didn't, I can't remember about Buster, but there were several people who didn't even know that gun had been replaced. So that tells me that that gun did not stay where our regular guns were. And I know that I didn't see it there. And that tells me that they didn't see it there.
Of course you didn't see it there, because it's got to be missing, correct? Or not?
That's that
One
question.
more
again?
circumstance for your latest story to work is that it's got to be missing as well. It was when you told law enforcement it was missing at Christmas time. Now we've had testimony at this trial, and now you're still claiming that you never saw it. It must have been kept somewhere else. Where else would it have been kept?
It could have been kept anywhere, Mr. Waters, the way Paul did guns, the way guns were handled around there. I was terrible about that.
You're terrible about that.
I should have been stricter.
That is a
But you know that third
not
gun
a
was
great
fired.
comment. I should have been stricter. Because I think that when you lose somebody that you love so much, the last thing you're gonna do is make a comment on their faults, pretty much, right? Or like, I should have been harder on them. I think you would say I should have been more loving. I should have been softer to them instead of saying I should have been harder on them. That's just
right
my
outside.
point.
The gun room door in turkey season of 2021, correct?
I know that now, based on what Will Lovin said.
And you know it was also fired across the street at y'all shooting house around that same time, don't you?
No, sir, I don't know that, but I know that I would assume that it was fired at the shooting range, but I don't have any reason to believe it was done in close proximity to that time.
A few months go by, a couple months go by, and you get confronted about your thefts from the law firm, correct?
September of 21.
And unlike June the 7th, when Jeannie confronted you, this time they had unassailable evidence, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, they had,
No wiggling out of this one, correct?
they didn't try to wiggle out of this one.
Well, you've been wiggling before, though, right? You wiggled when you stole your brother's money twice, correct?
I admit almost all of these things, Mr. Waters, but that's one of the things that I take dispute with,
Which one?
that I stole that money that you're referring to.
You're going to dispute that? Let's hear about that then. Tell me why you dispute. That check twice.
I don't dispute cashing that check twice.
Oh man.
But you're going to tell this jury that you accidentally didn't realize that you're supposed to be receiving some $125,000 check, $120,000 check, 2 times.
What
How
I'm
many
telling you,
$120,000 checks do you receive?
I got that check, and this is several months after. I mean, you can look at my finances,
Which
and
I
you can see how I
totally
was doing. I
believe
didn't balance
that
the
this
checkbook.
is a
But the fact of the matter
possibility
is, when I got
where
that
he
check,
mixed up the
I
check
asked about
with
it.
all the other checks.
And I was told mistakenly
But it's
that,
like, why do
that
you
it was for me
need
that
to make
I had done
that big
participated in that year and thing, which I did sometimes, not often, but sometimes.
Just
Apparently, a new check got cashed. I cashed that check. Then a year later,
just don't.
Where'd you keep that for you?
I don't know where it was. It was obviously in my desk. But Mr. Waters,
So you found it in your desk?
no, I didn't find it.
Well, you said it was obviously in your desk. So you remember that? You remember finding it in your desk?
No, I remember when we.
Did you go to finance and say, I just found this year-old check? Is this right?
No,
No, you took it to the bank, didn't you?
no, sir, I didn't.
Not allowing
Let
Mr. Murdaugh
that
to ask
guy
you questions.
So when this came
talk,
up-
man.
When
Come
this came up,
on.
that check got cashed. There's no way
Like
that I can have a check
feeling
in our law firm
himself
with
is
the way accounting is,
on a
and then I can
roll.
cash a check twice and think that
So enjoying
that's
it.
impossible. So to cash a check that's already been checked, it's going to throw. There's no question it's going to throw
He's
that off.
enjoying
What happened is
himself.
I had a we used to get a rent check. We get little checks. I'd have checks, and they pile up. The small checks. That check got mixed in, and it got sent to the bank, and it
Alex
got
is
deposited.
thinking, the more I explain, the more I'll get away with
That was a
it.
year after.
But not really.
I do dispute that I stole that money.
People don't
that
buy
money.
it.
All right. Well, I mean, you brought it up. So any of the other money you dispute, Celia?
No, sir, you brought it up. I was just telling you that was the one I disputed.
All right. And you heard Mike Crosby and Mark Dahl testify about that, correct?
I heard Ronnie and Mark testify about what they thought about it. Yes, sir.
Um, you testified yesterday about the side of the road,
Yeah, yes, sir.
and then you heard the testimony during the state's direct case about what you said on the 911 call. You heard that, didn't you?
I did hear that.
You heard the 911 call where you said you've been attacked by an unknown assailant and described him,
I did.
and you saw the video from the ambulance where you said you've been attacked by an unknown
So,
assailant and
he's
described him.
such a
Yeah.
pathological liar,
From
man.
Ryan Kelly, where you again went into detail and described this attack from an unknown assailant.
I did.
And you heard the testimony about your interview on September 6th with law enforcement, in which you went into great detail and again described this unknown assailant.
I did.
And you heard the testimony, and in fact, the image was put in about how you sat down with a SLED sketch artist and spent a period of time with her
He's
going
almost
forward and creating an
smiling.
image of the supposed assailant.
I did sit down with it. I was in the hospital, and they came in, sat down with me, asked me a bunch of questions. I answered their questions, and
Yes, you did. You
it
sat
came
there,
to it came up with a composite. Yes, sir.
sat there and answered their questions just as effortlessly and convincingly as you've been trying to do for the past 2 days. Isn't that correct?
No, sir,
Yes.
that's not true. In that hospital, I was. I mean, I couldn't sit still. I was standing up. I was walking around. I was using the bathroom with the lady sitting right there. I was 3
What?
days into not taking pills like I had been. So no, it wasn't effortlessly. But I mean, I told him what I told him. I don't dispute that I lied.
It was all lies, though, is the point, correct?
It was.
I mean, you're saying withdrawals, but you still were able to pull off lies in great detail.
I lied to them.
And then he just looks at the jury real quick. I lied to them.
And the lie that you told
Are they buying
of an
it?
unknown assailant
Is this
was
good?
to try to make people think that the quote real bad guys were back again to finish the job. Isn't that true?
No, sir, that's not true.
That's not the effect that you intended that story to have? Did it have that effect on people that you knew? Isn't that the exact effect that it had?
Alex smiling
I
a
don't-
little bit.
I don't think there's many people that believe that. No, sir. I know people that were. I mean, the people that were closest to me didn't believe that. So no,
When
sir.
accountability is at your door, Mr. Murdaugh, bad things happen. Isn't that true?
When accountability is at my
After your
doorstep,
wife- go ahead.
bad things happen. What do you mean by bad things?
June 7th happened. September 4th happened.
I don't believe that
Whoa,
June
whoa, whoa. September 4th is my birthday. It's a great day.
7th happened because accountability issues were at my doorstep. Now, I do believe in September that I tried to get a man to help me kill myself because issues were at my doorstep.
Every
Oh,
time, I'm
that
sorry,
is
for the first
so
time in your
sad.
life of privilege and prominence and wealth, when you were facing accountability, each time, suddenly, you became a victim and everyone ran to your aid. Isn't that true?
I disagree with that, but I mean, what you're
Shame for you is
you're-
an extraordinary provocation. Isn't that true, Mr.
hang
Murdaugh?
on, let me just finish this. You seem to be implying 2 dates, June 7th and September, and talking about accountability issues. And I mean, to me, those two things are totally different. There were no accountability issues on my doorstep on June 7th.
That's what you say.
And in September,
Not what other people say.
I was trying to, well, no, I mean, there's been a lot of people in September, that wasn't designed to gain me sympathy. That was designed for me not to be here because I didn't want my son to have to deal with the wake of the things that I'd done.
But that's not the story you told. The story that came out of your mouth right away was the story of you getting attacked by some unknown assailant while you were trying to change a tire and run flats. Well, that's the story that you told.
It is a story I told, but that's because the man who shot me did not shoot me that day as I intended. And I had to have a story as to how I got shot. So I lied.
So you lied. And you're saying
Now he's saying I had to have a story. I had to have a story. Now the selfishness, right, is another sign of possible psychopathy. And the fact that he was willing to kill himself so that his son didn't have to live with what he did. And that was after his son lost his mother and his brother. So he was gonna kill himself to what? So that his son has nobody left. The selfishness, so that my son didn't have to deal with the things that I've done meaning what? The financial crimes, right? Because at this point he wasn't, maybe he wasn't charged with the murders, or at least he wasn't convicted for the murders yet. But just the level of selfishness here, the disregard for other people and their feelings and their well-being, and his own son. Like, his son probably needs a father, and probably prefer to have a father in his life that has made mistakes, that was a drug addict, and that is trying to recover and improve himself and become a better person and learn from his mistakes, than a father who kills himself after he loses his mother and his brother.
And the people in your family and your friends didn't instantly believe that whoever these 12-year-old marauders were back to finish the job.
You keep using
It happened just 2 hours after you've been confronted by Chris Wilson.
You keep.
I think probably some people may have thought that when it first happened, but
you
I think
keep doing
Randy,
this.
Ronnie, Mark, those guys, I think they knew very quickly that this was not. I think they knew this was something
None
that I
of
done.
it is funny, Alex, with your smirk.
Shame for you, I asked this before, but shame for you is an extraordinary provocation, isn't it, Mr. Murdaugh?
Yes, for a
Shame for me is an
psychopath.
extraordinary provocation.
It is.
I don't like to be shamed.
Prospect of humiliating the legacy is an extraordinary provocation to you, isn't it, Mr. Murdaugh?
That
What do you mean by an
evil-
extraordinary provocation?
It affects you deeply. It's your biggest concern, is it not?
Yes.
No, that's not my biggest concern.
You're a middle-aged man like me.
And
I'm 54 years old. I'm not sure. You look like you're in better shape than me. So
you look like you're
Okay.
better than me. Flattery.
I was actually a couple years behind you in law school, but we never knew each other, did we?
I never knew you, no, sir.
Had a very successful career up until this point.
You know,
Simple question.
and the answer to that is no, Mr. Waters. I was an addict for more than 20 years.
All right, so making millions of dollars
went
over
like
a
this.
decade is not having a successful career. Is that what you're really doing?
No, that's not a successful career. When you
Okay, well, let me put it
no,
like this.
hang on, let me just.
All right, go ahead.
His body says a
It may have been
lot.
what you perceive as a successful career, but you know, I was the one who was fighting that. You don't have a very high self-esteem when you're an addict.
This is a great answer, by the way. Like, you know, if he wasn't doing all the things with his face, and if he wasn't a pathological liar and, you know, lied the whole time, pretty much, that he talked to every law enforcement officer, people might bite what he has to sell, because this is a great answer. No, I don't consider myself a successful lawyer, or I didn't consider myself, because I battled with addiction for several years, and for someone to need to have that amount of substances, it's not a success. No matter how much money you make, no matter how other people see you, you know, somebody who is a slave to addiction is not a success, because it's a very sad journey that you have to be on. Now, because you're always battling yourself, right? And feeling lonely and feeling like you're ashamed and guilty. Now, when he says these things, his answers make a lot of sense, but as soon as he says something, he does an adapter with his tongue, or with his lips, or with his you know, he's changing the microphone here, which is usually a sign of trying to relieve stress, trying to produce saliva and stress, which is caused by us sometimes lying or being deceptive. So he does say, you know, no, Mr. Waters, it's like real quick, but especially in this speed that we're watching this, you can see it. You can catch it.
So I don't
like
deem
that just now.
myself a success.
Would you agree that at least outwardly you're perceived as
Watch the
successful?
mouth.
I made a bunch of money, if that's what you wanted to get at.
No, I'm actually asking about the perception. You were perceived as a prominent,
I tried to
powerful
be.
lawyer.
How I was
You're
perceived,
president of trial
I
lawyers.
sure tried to be.
Lived a life of possessing authority.
Possessing authority?
Yeah, it's all the badges. You just admitted of your prominence in the legal community.
I don't think that I lived a life of possessing authority. I never saw myself as that way.
You don't think you lived a life of privilege?
I think I was very privileged.
And as we move to June of 2021, you were suffering from drug addiction.
And here, real quick, just to share, you know, what is Creighton Waters getting this from, right? I think he is cross-examining Alex as if Alex is a psychopath or somebody who has the narcissistic personality disorder. And this is what, you know, we know about psychopaths. They have extreme ego-centeredness. The psychopath's extreme ego-centeredness is consistent with his shallow emotions, absence of empathy, and ongoing use of others by manipulating or forcing them to support him. His fear threshold is usually much higher than the average person, and as a result, he appears very comfortable in stressful situations, which we also see here because it looks like Alex is not bothered by sitting here in this position and answering these questions, and he's just like, okay, no, I'll answer anything you want. I'll answer anything you want, and he's doing this provocation thing with Creighton back and forth, and almost seems to be enjoying it a little bit. But when Creighton started this cross-examination, he made sure to point out that Alex is from a prominent family and people see you as prominent, right? And you have influence in the community, right? And you had a badge that you presented as being an officer of the law, even though you weren't in the prosecutor's office. You were only there to help your father in some cases, right? And you had blue lights in your car, which means that you used it for people to think that you were an officer, you're a person of authority. And now, look at this. You're nothing anymore. You're not a lawyer anymore. And for a psychopath or somebody who has that shallow, superficial, who is that shallow, superficial being, it's piercing the ego. It's like, I am a prominent person. No, you're not. You're nothing anymore. And look at his face. Look at his face.
Absolutely.
Your father was terminally ill?
When? I mean,
That was removed in June of 2021.
no, sir.
He was very ill.
He was very ill.
And you were coming to a point of financial crisis.
I was having financial issues like I'd had many times in the past.
True.
Mr. Murdaugh, are you a family annihilator?
What?
A family annihilator? You mean like, did I shoot my wife and my son?
Yes.
No. Would never hurt Maggie Murdaugh. I would never hurt Paul Murdaugh under any circumstances.
Look at the breath. Right after he says that, I'm going to look for something here that I saw about the breath. That's not it. 10 signs someone is lying to you. Their breathing changes. When someone is nervous and lying to you, they may begin to breathe more heavily. Their shoulders rise and their voices get shallow. So let me try to go back in this question. Are you a family annihilator, right?
No, sir.
No.
Not. I didn't lie. Like I told you, I didn't lie directly to him. I lied to him by omission. Like we talked about. I mean, I didn't talk to him. I didn't see him at that time.
Did you lie to your law partners?
I did.
Did you lie to him about the kennels?
Some of them.
Did you lie to Mark Ball?
Yeah, I believe, based on what Mark said, I believe I did.
Did you lie to Ronnie Crosby?
According to what he said, I believe I did.
Is this, did I go too far here? 18.
Yes.
Did you lie to Bart Proctor?
Yes.
Did you lie to the Brandstone?
Okay, this is just when he's saying all the things, but let me see. Are you a family annihilator? Let me see if I can find that video real quick. Okay, here we go. I found it. Are you a family annihilator, right? And then let's just watch Alex's body language, and the breathing becomes really heavy right after he says, I'll never hurt Maggie Murdaugh and I will never hurt Paul
Annihilator.
Murdaugh.
A family annihilator? You mean like, did I shoot my wife and my son?
Yes.
No. Would never hurt Maggie Murdaugh. I would never hurt Paul Murdaugh under any circumstances.
Mm-hmm. No.
Say that.
That's him. Wow. Unreal, right? That is an unreal reaction that we see Alex here, even like scary. Now, Family Annihilator, we did see this when we watched the first video, and I just want to share this real quick. This is an article by Bianca as Joni. That is a different Bianca. And she's talking about a family annihilator and their psychological profile here. So family annihilator, let me see. There was a much shorter thing talking about the profile. Self-righteous killers, disappointed killers, anomic killers, paranoid killers. Let me see a paranoid, right? This individual believes that his wife and children are in immediate danger or under some form of threat and they need protecting. No. Okay, so maybe disappointed. This individual believes that he was let down by those surrounding him. No. Self-righteous. This individual in most cases is the father who often blames others, especially the mother, for relationships issues or breakup and for preventing him from having access to the children. I don't think so. Okay, so let me just see. I'm gonna replay this one more time because I think that Alex's body language here is amazing. Not in a good way, by the way. And then we're gonna go and find a family annihilator thing.
Many times in the past.
Mr. Murdaugh, are you a family annihilator?
A family annihilator? You mean like, did I shoot my wife and my son?
Yes.
No. Would never hurt Maggie Murdaugh. I would never hurt Paul Murdaugh under any circumstances.
Say that.
Scary stuff, huh? Scary stuff.
Excuse me?
You say that, but you lied to Maggie.
Okay, so now we're gonna go back to the regular stream here that we were watching, and I'm gonna find the family annihilator thing, and I'll be back in 1 second.
Yes,
Did you lie to your best friend, Chris Wilson?
probably.
Did you lie to your other friend, Bear Bulware, when you took his money?
No, sir.
No.
Not. I didn't lie. Like I told you, I didn't lie directly to him. I lied to him by omission. Like we talked about. I didn't talk to him. I didn't see him at that time.
Did you lie to your law partners?
I did.
Did you lie to him about the kennels?
Some of them.
Did you lie to Mark Ball?
Yeah, I believe, based on what Mark said, I believe I did.
Did you lie to Ronnie Crosby? Did
According to what he said, I believe I did.
you lie to Johnny Parker?
I don't believe I ever discussed that with Johnny.
Did you lie to him about the finances when you borrowed that money in July 2021?
I don't know if I lied to him about. I don't think Johnny asked me. I don't think I had to lie to Johnny about that. So I don't know.
Did you lie? Well, you certainly didn't disclose to him the truth when you borrowed that $250,000, did you?
I did not tell him what I was going to use it for.
I mean, didn't we say before that not telling the whole truth is the same as telling a lie?
Sure it is.
You don't think that's a lie, though?
I'm just saying, Mr. Waters, I'm not taking issue with that, but I don't even know that Johnny and I mean, Johnny loaned me money numerous times. It wasn't any long sit-down discussion where Johnny wanted to know exactly what I was doing with it. That conversation would have been, I needed it. Johnny was always willing to help me, and that would have been the conversation. So on that specific event, did I lie to him? I don't know.
He ended up being out $477,000, didn't he?
He ended up being out a lot of money.
Thank you for your qualifications as to that. Did you lie to Lee Cope?
I don't know. I don't know if Lee Cope was around when I said that or not.
Did you lie to Danny Henderson?
I did lie to Danny.
Did you lie to Jenny Seconder?
I don't. About finances? Yes, I did.
You never talked to her about the kennels? Did
No, I wouldn't think so.
you lie to Annette Griswold?
I did.
Did you lie to Christy Gerald, your other secretary, paralegal?
I don't believe she and I discussed. I would have at some point, I'm sure.
Did you lie to Michael Gunn?
I'm sure I did at some point, but I mean, Michael wasn't involved in any of this, so I don't know that any of this ever came up with Michael.
Did you lie to your clients? Did you lie to Pamela Pinckney?
I did.
Natasha Thomas?
I don't know that I dealt with Natasha, but I certainly lied about that.
To King Pinckney?
Again, I don't know that I talked to Hakeem, but I certainly lied about that.
Arthur Badger?
I did.
The Flower Girl?
I'm not sure that I talked specifically to them, but I lied about that.
Dion Martin?
I lied to Dion.
Johnny Bush?
Yes.
Manuel Cristiani?
I didn't have any conversations with him, but I certainly lied
Who
about
didn't
it.
you
Jamie
lie
Richard.
to?
Yes.
Randy Drawdy?
Yes.
Jordan Jinks?
Yes.
Mary Duncan?
Yes.
Adriana Hay,
Yes.
Angel Gary,
Yes.
Christopher Anderson,
Yes.
Elise Mallory,
Yes.
Thomas Moore.
No.
You never lied to him? You just took his money. You never actually lied to his face is what you're saying?
He and I never had a conversation, but I did take that money.
Did you lie to Tony Satterfield just a couple months before June 7th?
Um,
It's all the text. You want me to get it out?
just remind me. There's been a lot. Just remind me what it was.
I'll show you what's been marked as 463.
I don't remember the exact date. So
That was in April 2021. Is that right? Where you text him and tell him how hard you're working on the case, and in fact, you've stolen millions of dollars from him? Tony Satterfield, who got up on the stand and told the jury about that?
I texted him on April 12th, so 5 weeks before June 7th.
Told him everything was okay. You're working hard, right? It's a complex case.
Yeah, I told him I was working on the case.
He was the son of your longtime housekeeper, Gloria.
I'm sorry.
He was the son of your longtime housekeeper, Gloria, who had served your family for many years.
That's correct.
And you stole millions from those boys.
I stole those funds.
And he and his family had started asking questions as we moved to June 7th. Didn't that happen?
No, I mean, there wasn't any rise in them asking questions. No, sir. I mean, he periodically checked in and asked me questions, but, you know, it had come out long before this. I believe in the Island packet that there had been a settlement of $500,000. I mean, that had been months and months, if I'm not mistaken. And so I didn't notice any uptick in Tony asking questions, and I don't believe that there was any uptick in Tony asking questions before June 7th.
So you just gratuitously out of the blues decided to lie to him and send that text? Or were the things going on externally that caused you to be heading off the pass before further questions started to be asked about money? You couldn't say that.
No, I don't think there was anything. I mean, on April 21st, I don't know what external factors you're talking about.
Do you want to explain that one anymore?
Explain what?
Whatever you want.
I just want to answer your questions, Mr. Waters.
Lied to everyone about the side of the road, that people that came to stop the help in the ambulance, folks in the 911 and Ryan Kelly and the composite sketch artist and all of them, correct?
I lied to a lot of people about that.
You know why people lie, Mr. Murdaugh?
To
Because
hide
they know
the
they've done
truth?
something wrong.
For the most time, I do.
You've been able to lie quickly and easily and convincingly if you think it will save your skin for well over a decade. Isn't that true?
I have lied well over a decade.
And you want this jury to believe a story manufactured to fit the evidence that you brought forth just yesterday after hearing this trial's worth of testimony.
No, sir, that's not correct.
Mr. Murdaugh, we went through this for a while, but you remember at the beginning of your testimony, I asked you whether or not you agreed that trying to explain your presence on the kennel video was the most important part of your testimony before this jury. Remember that? And you said, oh, not the most important. I said, was it at least important? You recall that from yesterday.
Yeah, I recall you asking those questions, yes, sir.
And you agree it's important, don't you?
I agree that is an important component. I think there's a lot of important components.
And you testified yesterday and during cross yesterday and cross today, kind of evolved on the fact of the factors that led you to decide to lie at some point during that interview with David Owen, correct?
I disagree with that. No, I don't think those factors have evolved. I mean, you've asked some more specific questions, but those factors are still the same factors. You may have asked questions and gained a little more detail, but those factors haven't changed.
But it was the dope paranoia. It was the fact that the deputy took your GSR. It was the fact that your law partners and Greg Alexander and the sheriff were telling you needed to have a lawyer before you talked to police. It was a factor that you got in the car with Dave Owen and thought he was somebody else from some case 10 years ago, correct?
That believing David Owens was the person involved in the case that I talked about was one of the factors that caused me to distrust SLED.
Right. And then also you said that they started asking you about, in that first interview, about your relationship with Maggie and Paula. And that's one thing you mentioned as well,
And that
correct?
was certainly something that contributed to me having paranoid thinking.
Lots of heavy breathing.
You good? Playing the Daniel Green body cam video, 2026.
There we go.
Yeah, the police are here now. The police are here now. Come on, bro.
When was the last time you were here with them or talked to them or anything like that?
It was earlier tonight. I don't know the exact time, but I mean, I was trying to go an hour and a half from my mom's, and I saw them about 45 minutes before that.
That was Sergeant Green, correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And at that point in time, Sled was not there. No one had gotten GSR from you. Your law partners or Sheriff Hill were not there.
That's correct.
No one had asked you about your relationships. David Owen was not there.
That's correct.
But you still told the same lie. And all those reasons that you just gave this jury about the most important part of your testimony was a lie too. Isn't that true, Mr. Murdaugh?
I disagree with that.
Nothing further.
Mm-mm. Turned down for what?
Ladies and gentlemen, take a break now.
Turned down for what? That was it. Nothing further. So, Alex, after all this, after doing all this gymnastics, right? He just proves that you lied, and it wasn't because you were stressed. It wasn't because you were paranoid. It wasn't because you thought that guy was David Owen. It wasn't because of any of that, right? You just lied because you lie, and you're a pathological liar. So with that being said, I know I was going to find the more condensed version of the Family Annihilator thing, but I didn't find it right now. But there is, in one of the videos that I covered the cross-examination, which I think there's a total of 3 of them, right in the beginning of the video, it's the Family Annihilator thing from Twitter, which was very, very interesting. It's like a profile pretty much. And then we did it. We did it. We finished watching the cross-examination in a total of 3 or 4 videos. Maybe there is the first one, the direct. We did that, and then we did the cross-examination, and we see a lot of signs here. We see a lot of signs. I'm not here to diagnose nobody. I don't know if Alex is a psychopath. I don't know if he killed his family. I don't know any of this. All I know is that when he talks, there are a lot of adapters. His body language shows that he is under stress a lot of times, which is very typical for the situation he's in. But especially after some of the sentences, he does move a lot of his lips and tongue around, and he moves his face a lot. He has a lot of adapting with the microphone. Even though the microphone seems fine, he touches the microphone all the time. He moves his glasses. He has that stare, constantly staring at Creighton Waters and just following him around with the eyes, just following him. The argumentative, that even when there's no need to be argumentative or no need to lie, you can see that Alex is doing that. They're repeating the questions over and over. They're repeating the questions, which to me seems like you're trying to buy yourself some time to come up with an answer because you can't be truthful. Also, the fact that he keeps adding to an answer, like Creighton will ask him a question and he will just add, even though there's no more question pending, he'll be like, well, and then what? Silence. But the reason why I did this, Creighton, Mr. Waters, no question, they say answer as direct as you can, as brief as you can if you are on the stand, and only answer what they ask you. Don't provide additional information, because nobody here is your friend. They're not trying to help you. They're actually trying to put you in prison for the rest of your life, or even to send you to the electrical chair, which wasn't the case on this case, but that's what they're there for. Like, they're not trying to be your buddy. Okay. So there's no need to be offering additional information when nobody asks you a question. So many, many, many red flags here, many red flags that we talked about with this book, Psychopath Free. Great book. We talked about all these red flags that I noticed on, watching Alex as a whole, not just today, but, all of the things that we see Alex doing, and even the people around him, the selfishness, the little detective, the using people for money, resources, and attention, shallow praise, like when he was praising Creighton, unfortunately, people that have passed away in his past, cracks in their mask. It seems like Jim is watching his friend, and he just he sees the cracks going, happening in front of him, and he just looks so disappointed. And all of those things are the reasons why I decided to create these videos where we can all notice together what the heck is going on with Alex Murdaugh, and why is he in this situation? Why is this such a popular trial? And unfortunately, or fortunately, who knows, right? I watched the entire trial. I don't think there was enough evidence, physical evidence, to convict him, but the jury found that he was guilty for both murders, and he was convicted. He has a double life sentence. And one thing that someone mentioned yesterday in the comments said that he was waiting to be evaluated. I don't know if it's like a psychological evaluation, but he is in prison now, and hopefully, the people that he affected deeply, his family and the people who he affected in any way, shape, or form, hopefully they can find some closure or some way to move on and to put what happened with this guy in the past. And I know it may take a lot of time, but time is really a friend and a healer. And, when you surround yourself with friends and people that care about you, you get a different strength. Also, people that have something in common with you. So, always try to find a better way. Always try to find a journey, a resource, or something that will put you in a better place. Because unfortunately, sometimes we encounter people like this. And I'm not talking about the murders, but sometimes we encounter people that will destroy our lives emotionally, that will destroy our trust, our friendships, even in our families. And we have to find a deeper meaning. We have to find a way to move forward. So hopefully they can find that healing in their journey. And, one thing we can all do is pray for all the people who were affected by this guy, and, pray that the memories of his family may live on. And even for his son, Buster, the one that is left and is free, that he may find a better journey for himself, So with that, I just want to thank everybody for watching. It has been such a pleasure spending this time with you. Please subscribe and share if you like the content, and I'll be making more videos going forward, and you're going to get a notification when those are going to come out. So please subscribe and share, leave a comment, and have a great night. God bless you.